Hello and welcome to the Honest War Game. I'm your host, Rob. This is the Russian section of the weekly show.
Greetings, comrades.
I'm joined by Fit Nick, as always. Hey, Fit Nick.
Hello.
Hello. The second best Nick that we've had on today. No, first best. I'm sorry. And then also Zuma Tom is down here.
Why is Reese delivering a TED Talk?
I'd like also to thank our special... Yeah, Reese is here. Has anyone got a good Reese impression?
Not one that would not be bullying. Oh, never mind. He's just gone for it. Okay.
The thing we learned when we were playtesting was, it's pretty still.
I'm not going to bully a mate like that when he's not here to defend himself.
Oh,
unless it's Val.
Reese.
Fuck Val.
He's here to defend himself.
He's there. He's right there.
Right
Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to the
Val
show.
to be here to defend himself.
Nick and Tom are here. We're going to be talking Space Marines, unfortunately. Listen, we had to do it at some point. We've tried to avoid it as long as possible. I even had a tooth out last week to try and skip the show. Yeah. Thanks to you two for covering for me last week. How did it go last week?
Yeah, it was good fun. We just played a TTS lockdown game of Warhammer. Mainly because I was just gagging to play some sort of 40k.
Mm-hmm.
So you decided to play Space Marines, which is very interactive.
Were you just gagging to push some men into some other men, Nick?
Oh, mate. They were all holding big swords and big guns.
Oh God. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Henry Mendez, Eyeglasses, Datcom in the chat. Ratastanti, Zaid Guy. I like Zaid Guy. He's over in Israel, which is really far away. There we go. Start of the show. I've got one in, and I'm very happy with it. Today's show, we're going to be talking about Space Marines and their roles in an army list, is what we're going to be talking about. But before that, I'm going to find out how Nick or Tom are. We're going to talk about some news, because it turns out there's a Nurgle pizza oven on the horizon, which is exciting. Also, I don't know if we have time to do an in-depth analysis of the 40k FAQ that came out at the weekend, the Marine FAQ, the Necron FAQ. There's a lot came out for that. Was it a whole page?
If that, like the Necron one.
Between them, yeah.
Yeah, the Necron one was literally... But yeah, it was barely a page.
It was barely a page. Which, surely, top of the show, that's got to be the talking point. So they've extended how long it takes them to do FAQs now. They've added an extra 2 weeks so that they can really gather the data. And it seems like they haven't changed what they've done. No. If anything, they've done less work than I would have expected in half the time.
Yeah, but I guess maybe it's that there's less is that a sign that they are doing a better job in the first case than previously?
Do we think that's the case though?
Well, I think these codexes are better than the 8th edition codexes for sure.
I mean, that's true. They didn't come with a day one FAQ.
No.
Okay. Okay. Tom, you got any
Not to be
thoughts?
confused with coming with one FAQ, which is what happened.
Yeah, they.
Yeah. It was one frequently asked question.
Hey, Mam there in the chat. I'm Full Greener. What's going on? Dreadwoods, big up. So yeah, they seem to have not changed stuff, which actually, I was thinking about this week. Whether or not they've made it so you can res ATVs all the time or whatever, they didn't change in a circle, fine. Do you know what? It's kind of nice. I'm sorely tempted to just suggest that they release the books and then they just do and then we just leave it at that. No FAQs. Just
Space Wolf players cry.
No, we just leave it as is. Are we not okay with that, Tom, Nick? They get one shot, Eminem style, sweaty palms, mum's spaghetti.
Well, maybe if they knew that, would that make them take their time or do a better job first time? But if we're setting that rule, then I don't think it'll work.
Okay, you're not pro that. All right, fair enough. Okay, Tom, you got any thoughts?
I mean, I feel like that's just cutting off to spite your face. Although maybe for a reset, you need to bully these nerds into actually releasing a useful product.
Tom, that's how I've lived my whole life, and I refuse to change. Yeah, that's my entire premise for existence.
All right.
Bullying nerds.
It's chaos is a ladder. You need to bully your way to the top of the nerd pyramid to become the king nerd.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's the galaxy brain move. Just like Yes Meat Ball says, you can't answer frequently asked questions if you never read them, which is a pro
And as you
move.
well know,
Is a question really
FAQ
frequently
email is
asked?
directly hooked up to a printer that prints out the email, and that it's like a
Straight to a
Wallace
shredder.
style conveyor belt that takes that email to a shredder, and that is shredded directly into the recycling bin.
That's a lot of systems that you think that they can put together in one
Yeah,
run.
I don't believe Games Workshop recycle.
At all.
They use old bits of sprue, right?
I think they fly tip.
Yeah, they print out all their game FAQ emails and then dump it on Warlord Games' doorstep.
That makes me feel bad now because I bought a Whirlwind once, and you know how you got like the two sides of the vehicle, you got the left side and the right side. I got the left side of a Whirlwind and the right hand side of a Land Raider, and I took it back and I replaced it. I could have just kept the Land Raider sprue and used it as terrain. I'm very sad.
You could have, and you maybe should have. Can we just stop everything for a moment? Because there's some big news in the chat. I'm not sure this is right, but Gozzy has joined us in the chat.
Gozzy is, in fact, blessed us with his presence. So.
In the chat. That's probably one of them.
I think that's fake news unless it's good in VIP.
Tom, you admin, VIP him.
I can't even see him in the chat. How am I meant to give him... Oh, right, he's right there. Yeah, here we go.
He also looks like a Russian bot. Gozzy0728. Thanks for that.
I'm not admin. I'm just a mod, so I can't VIP him, unfortunately.
Right,
I could ban Gozzy. Would you like me to ban Gozzy?
Don't ban him.
Could report him to Twitch.
I can also just say thank you to Grubby for subscribing as well. Big love to you. All right. So FAQ, get out of the way. So Inner Circle is fine, apparently. No dramas. Resin ATVs is fine. Have you two got any thoughts on that?
I think it's silly.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one argument that I saw where, you know, if they can resin infantry and a biker, like why is a biker fine and why is the ATV not? And I can kind of see some in that argument that, but like I feel like the ATV is too big. Like it's in the name, it's ATV, all-terrain vehicle, and obviously that entire acronym and what it stands for is disputed with that vehicle by what it looks like. It doesn't look like an all-terrain vehicle at all. It doesn't have the vehicle keyword.
It doesn't look like a move sideways vehicle.
Yeah, they either just remove that, or they actually give it the vehicle keyword, because it's like 8 wounds. It's big enough to be a vehicle. And I think someone, I can't remember where it was, they said, like, you know, compare it to like Gene Stealer Ridge Runners. They're basically equivalent size in their vehicles, similar amount of wounds as well. So,
except they look cool.
Yeah, they look cool. But like the ATV getting shot, like the firepower, like that would destroy that. It's so out there that an apothecary who's a medic could walk up to this thing and fix it completely.
I love it. I love it.
I know the game is quite abstract anyway because it's a dice game and blah 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 blah. But like that seems to push it too far. I think.
It's your suspension of disbelief, right?
Yeah, and it's pushing that too far. I think for me.
Yeah, they need to put a law that the ATV is actually indestructible, but the driver is the one that's killed when you like take its last wound. That would give it an 8-wound Space Marine, though, which would be ultimately also very weird. Let's be real. Hey, sorry again, and Nick's tab in the chat. Alan Droll, thanks for joining us. And Land Speeders also, don't forget, are only 6 wounds, and you can't res the Marines inside the Land Speeder. You can just res the...
Yeah.
Either way, it's here to stay. So you can res an ATV. Whether or not it's actually even competitive, who cares? But it's quite funny. I quite like it. And, you know, whatever. But someone recently did, if you listen back to Tuesday's show, you hear recently at a tournament, someone actually used that abuse at a tournament and actually ended up doing really, really well at a tournament and based it around that ATV manipulation. So
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like this is... Sorry, you go for it, Nick.
I was going to say, do you know how many ATVs they had?
No, I don't. I'm so sorry.
Full 9 if they were abusing that.
Yeah, you would go for at least 9, right? Henry Mendez over on YouTube says my kids called it the Primario car, which is, I mean, really, I mean, how old are your kids? That's really well constructed as a joke. I barely could come up with that myself, if I'm honest. All right, so yeah, that's the FAQ. Necron stuff. There seem to be very little changes. Like they just clarified the Deceiver, which was nice. That was good. So the Deceiver's better now, which is a positive. Nick, feeling good about that?
Yeah, well, I think the Deceiver is good already.
Okay.
I think that the Deceiver is better than the Nightbringer. That's my controversial opinion.
No, I now agree with Nick, but that doesn't mean I agree with him that the Deceiver is good. I think the Nightbringer is just shit.
Ooh, okay. So that's two very different, like, to concurrent thoughts going around the internet at the minute. Those are two very different takes. You got any evidence for that, or?
Well, I think the Nightbringer is obviously clearly better in combat than the Deceiver, but I wouldn't argue that he's better by a vast amount. Like, it's a big margin, but he's not like factors better. Their mortal wound output is relatively equivalent as well. But the Deceiver has such a big advantage and benefit to your army, where I think the Nightbringer, yes, he's a threat, but he starts in one place and he can only be in one place at a time, and your opponent can counterplay him relatively easily and take him down quite easily, I think. So there'll be some matchups where he'll be amazing and some matchups where he'll be terribly shit. But I think the Deceiver is always going to benefit your army and always be good, because it gives you that early positional advantage on the table with its redeploy mechanics and going into reserve mechanics. So I think in every matchup he will benefit your army in some way, whereas the Nightbringer won't.
Yeah, it's situational, like for who it can hit and when it can hit, right? Tom,
I can go on that if you want. Yeah, I can absolutely go on that. I agree with all those points, but that doesn't mean I think the Deceiver is good. I think it pigeonholes you into a list that's suboptimal. So yes, the Deceiver will always benefit your army because it's integral to the way your army works. If you take the Deceiver, you end up building your entire army around that Deceiver, and therefore, of course, it's going to be massively important to your army regardless of the matchup. The problem is, I think if you end up doing that, you end up taking a list that isn't the strongest that you can take for Necrons. That's just my perspective. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily wrong to take the Deceiver. That just means that from my personal perspective, where I'm searching for an optimal list, taking like a team environment, I probably wouldn't take the Deceiver. Now, that said, I do agree that it's better than the Nightbringer now, but that doesn't mean that my opinion of the Deceiver has changed. It means that my opinion of the Nightbringer has changed. The Nightbringer has a few problems with it that I don't really like. I think the most important thing that it has is the mortal wound output, and specifically the ability to pop like a character. So it has the Gaze of Death Catan power, which allows you to pick a unit within 9 inches, roll 3d3, and for every 4+, you get d3 mortal wounds on it, which means realistically you're probably getting, if you roll 2 4+s and getting 4 wounds down on it. I mean, you've got a second Catan power that can then maybe pop Primaris Apothecary, like we saw last week when I played against Nikos. The problem with it is that it's got 9 wounds. Although it does get the living metal, it's only toughness 7, which means that realistically, most things can charge it and take those 3 wounds off it in an assault phase. You're also probably going to take 3 wounds off it in a shooting phase, which means it's dying in 2 turns. Also, it doesn't consistently kill things it's meant to kill. It's got 6 attacks with its normal attack swing. They hit on 2s and wound on 3s or 2s, depending upon the toughness of the target that you're hitting, and none of those have rerolls. So it's a little bit swingy for what it tries to do, and even then it goes in, it probably dies in 2 turns anyway. So let's say you then charge it with those Intercessors, for example, that do the 3 wounds to it, which aren't great in combat, but they'll clobber it because they wound him on 5s. He still can't kill all of them, because even if you go for the massive swing attacks, then you've still got, 12 attacks, you're hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, maybe 2s. Then you're killing like 6 to 8 Marines. You're not killing your way through that, and you have no way to fall back out of combat and charge something else. So you get to charge one thing, you might not kill it, and then you die.
So that's actually number one. Very well done without any breaths. Like, round of applause. Round of applause, everyone.
Practice is like that deep sea dive.
I had a gag like 80. I had a gag like 87 words ago where I was like, is it deceiving? And we've gone too far now for me to even make that joke.
If you want to see the survey of a coral reef, just tell me about how looters are good and then just send me underwater.
Just breathe oxygen into it. Perkysaurus, thanks for subscribing, by the way. You make a good point. You both do. And actually, I think it feeds into a conversation that I'm going to have later on when I talk about the Marine book. Obviously, like, we all know that I feel more comfortable in Age of Sigmar than I do in 40k. Tom, your opportunity to tell me that I'm shit at 40k. Appreciate that.
I'm shit at AOS. It's fine.
Right, but like the thing that, like, as reading through the Marine book, or the thing that I'm going to say is twofold. 2 points. Number one, the Catan for coverage, as in live stream games, tournament games, and generally that means just your basement games and your mates games with your mates, will be great fun, right? Because it's this like scary piece running around, being like, you know, this kind of like pivot point in a game, which is quite fun. When it dies, it's great for your opponent, like when you put Morty or Magnus on the board, and it brings a lot to the game as well. It's arguable how much it brings to the game, but it's a fun kind of like it's a fun piece to have on the board, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, whether that be from competitive coverage sort of standpoint or just playing with your friends. However, the other flip side of that is I love 40k now, because 40k is right now. I need to go get those objectives, baby. And now, like, when I'm reading through a book, because honestly, the Marine book's massive. It's like fucking massive, and when you're reading through it, you're like, fuck, that's so much to try and think about. And actually, it's not loads to think about, because you still need to try and score the primaries. Yeah, and you're basically already getting 15 points just for playing Marines with one of the secondaries, so that's fine. And so, like, actually, once you start to break it down like that, like, those pieces, like Tom said, are actually, like, do they do the same job as all my objective scoring units that I want to put in my army to win the primary? Or do they support those objectives, those primary units well enough? Do they support them well enough that they're worth taking in an army? And I would probably think, I don't know if the Catan Nefer is. Maybe the Deceiver, yes. There's more of an argument for the Deceiver than I think there is for to other fella Nick. So I agree with you both, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If that's fine. I was just going to get myself off this fence. And then, all right. Before we get on with everything else, Nick, have you been well? You done anything this week, 40k wise?
Yeah, so I was telling you guys before we went live that I've got a new member of the Nikos Warhammer family.
Oh yeah,
here's part of it here.
What is it?
It's the belly of a stomper.
Oh my god, have we all now got the stompers?
It's Nick's turn to paint a stomper, guys. It'll take him less than 6 months.
Is that how long you're on sick, Tom?
Yes, because I took a break.
Oh, okay. Go on, Nick, sorry.
I can imagine you needing a break to paint it, to be fair. Yeah, so I've got a stomper now, ready for when we can first go to our... so I think when we can all go to a tournament again, we're all planning to go to a Games Workshop tournament with a stomper list.
We are.
Stomper phrase list. So I've got my stomper ready for that. So I acquired that because last week I decided that I didn't want my Imperial Marines anymore. I kept all my combat-focused chaos stuff, so like all my combat Space Marines, all my Khorne Berserkers, Demon Princes, stuff like that. But I've got rid of all of like my Imperial Marine stuff because I just wanted something new and also wanted to clear out some space because they take up quite a lot of space, like in my cabinet. So I went over to my friend Rick's house. Shout out to Rick. He's a fucking legend. And we like did a big great swap, big Warhammer swap. So I gave him loads of Marine stuff. He gave me a stomper, some more bits, and then the start of a Death Guard army.
Whoa! Jumping on the hotness just before it gets released, Nick. What the? Nick, you're such a different person to 3 years ago. Can we talk about this? You're like, yeah, I like to hobby. That's who I am and now you're like You're getting into the power builds before the power builds even exist. Who are you, Nick? You've changed. Huh?
Buy low.
Buy low.
Buy low, sell high.
What did you end up picking up for Death Guard?
So I've got 3 Plague Burst Crawlers and 20 Plague Marines so far. I've got some other bits as well. And I've bought some extra Plague Marines because I want Plague Marines, and so the Plague Burst Crawlers are going to be like the holding the home objective base with like a Demon Prince. So I've got a cool Forge or Demon Prince as well.
Nice.
This fella, he's awesome. Like the big dude, he's got like the barrel with some like Nurglings in a hot tub style at the back.
I quite like the barrel. It's like really 80s, like it's super 80s. Yeah.
So the Plague Burst Crawlers are going to be like the backfield stuff, and then I want like Rhino rushing Plague Marines, the combat focused. So I'm going to have like two hench squads of 10 that are all combat focused, and then some other stuff as well. So yeah, but I've always loved the Death Guard models. The new range is fucking brilliant. The Plague Burst crawlers are cool. My plan is to buy 2 more Plague Burst crawlers, but convert them into rhinos because I kind of like the idea of having it's almost like an armored column of Death Guard. So I think it'd be cool to have the rhinos, the Plague Burst crawlers and the rhinos kind of look similar. And the Plague Burst crawler isn't that much bigger than a rhino for it to be like modeling for advantage or anything like that. I hope anyway.
Well, like the Plague Scroll is like quite a unique profile, really. It's quite squat, little Nurgle chode. Scrutiny Hugh, thanks for subscribing. Haven't seen you in a while. That's nice. Grubby. So a lot of my building plans are tossed up in the air now. So much has been legended. Yeah, a lot has been. That's pretty rough. Do you think they will tie the Death Guard in with a new Maggotkin? I'm not sure about that. One of the things that I saw about the new Death Guard... Oh, no, sorry, Nate. We'll carry on asking you. We'll move on to actually new Death Guard. It's just you kind of got us onto the next bit. Now I've got to pause before I segue. Is there anything that you particularly want to be good from the new book? Have you thought about that? Or are you just not that bothered?
I'm not hugely bothered because I'm collecting them more for the hobby project because the models are amazing and I can do a cool Nurgle paint scheme. So I'm not jumping on them just before they're amazing game wise. It's because I've always admired those models from afar. Now I've got a chance to.
Would you describe yourself as a long time Death Guard player?
Yeah, long time Death Guard admirer.
I mean, you've been playing all forms of chaos, so I guess it works, right?
It does work. It does work. And they are also, you're right, they're phenomenal models, and the ability to like mess about with them and like I'm going to try and do some streaking grind, which I've never done before on mine. So like they're a great they're a really good canvas to try a bunch of different techniques out on. So they're super cool models. Yeah. I'm in love with the Mephitic Blight Haulers because they're just weird. They're super weird. Big love.
Yeah. I kind of want. So what I want to be good is obviously I want the Plague Burst Crawler to be good because I've got 3 of the motherfuckers, and I also want just normal Plague Marines to be good. I'm sure. I mean they're decent now. I'm sure they will be good in the new Codex because they're one of the main units, so they can't not make it good. But yeah, I'm hoping combat and Plague Marines will be the tits. Yeah, my hopes and dreams.
Well, they're going to be, right? Well, anything that can push stuff off an objective is always super useful. So I can definitely see that being the case. I'm kind of hoping Blight Drones get their day in the sun because they've always been a bit rubbish. I know at some point they're in some competitive lists, but I would like some more. That would be sweet. Zeitguy says, Plague is so 2020, Nick. Are you a little bit worried that you're getting behind the kind of like the cultural zeitgeist, getting involved with Nurgle this late into a global pandemic? Or do you feel like it's the right time?
Well, it's been in all year, and it's on its way out now. So a bit of a Warhammer hipster. So I'll play what's not popular. That makes sense.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. All right, Tom, how you been this week? You done anything fun?
No, I've painted the armor on 4 Grey Knight legs. Here you are. I need to do a second coat. That is all.
Okay. All right.
I think I played another game of the Scottish League. I played against Ryan in his Eldar with my Necrons. He was running like MSU with Wraith Seers and Wraith Lords and stuff. And I won that one. So now I'm playing Innis in the next round.
Oh, that's fun. Are you enjoying it still?
Yeah, he's DMing people asking how he wins.
Oh, okay.
Whereas so I'm doing the Ultra Chad move of just not preparing whatsoever.
What's in his playing? What's in his playing?
Some Tyranids. Apparently he's got like a horde of gaunts, but I have prepared so little I haven't even seen his list.
Do you feel like you've got the psychological upper hand now because he's asking how he beats you?
No, he just does this all the time. He actually prepares for his games.
Have you thought about like throwing the gauntlet down for like an additional side bet or a big hustle?
No, because then I have to prep for the game, and I don't really want to do that. I'd rather just not prep. Seeing as it's a tabletop simulator event, I'm just like, nah.
Yeah, but like, what Rob's saying is that you do something to put so much pressure on him.
Yeah,
it doesn't cost you anything, apart from maybe obviously if you bet something and you lose the bet.
Yeah. Which I probably will, because I don't really care. But it's like, fine. Like, Innis does a good job of getting all the Scottish guys to prepare for, like, games. So when they, like, see, like, a tournament list document, they have a look through it and they'll read it and they understand it. And they make sure they know what everything they could potentially play does. Whereas I prefer to just rock up at the table, have no idea what's going on, and then just have to improvise.
Okay.
because it teaches me like reactions and stuff, and like how to react properly rather than
Yeah, I
how
get
to
it. I get it.
prep.
It's kind of how I feel.
That's how I justify it anyway.
I personally, I'm with you. Like, if we take it like the kind of world at the minute, there's a lot of people in the world, a lot of overpopulation. That's a bit of a myth, actually. But, you know, like, there's a lot of people in the world, maybe people should prepare for jobs less. You know, you just get thrown into a job, you live or you die. You know,
I mean,
like
the difference is
firefighting.
that I'm not trying to feed my family. I'm trying to play toy soldiers.
Well, yeah, but I think it's the same premise. Firefighting, just throw
I'm
them
thinking
in.
about
How hard is it?
I'm thinking about changing career and becoming a heart surgeon. I might do that. Rock up one day.
Cut them open.
I just fancy
really
stabbing
keen
some hearts.
to give this a go.
Yeah.
Just reactive. That's how we live our whole lives. Just reactive. All right. Well, good, Tom. Good luck with that event. I know you're all dying to know what I've been doing. I appreciate you asking. Thanks.
What have you been doing,
Up to 40K, Rob?
Well, no, I have. I finished my Custodian's army. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done.
No one cares. Whatever. And now, I for some reason, and mainly because I don't give a shit about them, so I can do them while I'm streaming and just paint them to the side. I'm just painting up some Marines, which is nice. I've got like 10 Inceptors. I've got 30 Intercessors. I unfortunately have 15 Hellblasters, which, dear God, like I might try and make them into Eradicators somehow, but yeah, anyway. So I've got a bunch of dudes, and I'm just going to paint them up. It's like, and it is not a good paint scheme. Just sprayed them silver, and then picked out some detail in black. So I still need one more colour, and I don't know what colour it's going to be.
Green eye lenses.
Yeah, that works. I was thinking
like
about doing that.
And stuff like that on them.
Yeah, just something super quick. But I got 10 Intercessors done in the day show yesterday. So to give you, not 10 Intercessors, 10 Inceptors, to give you a quick indication. And I tried to do some streaking grime on one of them, but I made a giant mess of it. And so I don't know what to do now. So
what is streaking grime?
Streaking grime is a type of enamel made by those guys that do racist stuff on the internet, unfortunately, AK Interactive. So I won't be buying them from them again, but I bought this before they did their pro-genocide ad campaign, which is a super weird move. Again, I know 2020's been a lot. I know a lot's happened. Tiger King, we've all been through loads of stuff, but the pro-genocide ad campaign from the paint company was still a weird turning point.
I'm not sure public opinion was swinging that way.
I don't think it was okay. Yeah, I don't think that was ever okay. So that's weird. But there are other companies that make this sort of stuff, so go research them. But effectively, it's some enamel stuff. You bang it on, and then you use some white spirit to like take it off. So you effectively highlight by deleting. It's like a wash, but you take the wash off, if that makes sense. Or you blur it.
Yeah, I think you could do a similar thing with one of the Games Workshop technical paints. I've got it Typhus Corrosion, I think it is. So James of James Workshop used it on his knights. So he just painted like some of the mechanical bits like silver. Then I think he washed it black, and then he slopped Typhus Corrosion all over it, and then you just kind of like wipe it off. So like you only leave the corrosion in the in the rivets and the shade, the bits where the shade, the recesses. That's the word I'm trying to get to. So it sounds like it's a similar technique. Like you paint on the grime, it seeps into like the nooks and crannies, and then you wipe it off the raised surfaces.
Yeah. Or you can just. It's quite good for flat panel stuff. So a lot of heresy guys use it because you put it on like a flat panel, and then you literally like drag it down in a line, and then you just kind of use the white spirit to like drag it off. And there's loads of stuff like that. As we all know, I'm a terrible hobbyist, so I'm trying to learn to be better and do some more things. Whether or not it'll end up being useful, I'm not sure. But yeah. Anyway, that's all I've been doing. On to the news. Oh, but I reckon I'll have a Marine army painted and based by the end of next week. Will it be a good one? No, not at all. But it'll be done, which is nice. And that's kind of one of my driving forces now, because who knows how long is left on lockdown. But I'm very much looking forward to us getting some games in. So I want to get some armies ready. So as soon as lockdown's over, we just get on with it and just start smashing, which is going to be really fun. That's kind of where I'm at. So that's what I'm about. On to news. Have you seen the news this week about the Death Guard, Nick? That makes it relevant.
I haven't properly seen the news, but I've seen a picture leaked of what you guys described to me as a like a Nurgle's oven, pizza oven.
Yes, Nurgle, Death Guard have got. Well, if you remember the feculent Narmor that the Chaos Demons get, and
The what? Sorry.
the Feck tree, as it's well known.
What?
You
Do you
haven't
want me
seen
to
the
say it?
Nurgle. You
Shall I
haven't seen
say
the
it?
Nurgle tree.
Say it, Tom.
Don't
The
say it,
fanny
Tom.
tree.
The fanny
my
thing. Oh, oh.
Yes, the feculent Narmor, or as my friends from Sheffield would call it, the fanny tree. Yeah, so they've now got their own one, the pizza oven, as it looks like, and it's got some rules with it, which are quite interesting. And one of them is putrescent fog. It's an aura, which is pretty good. While friendly Death Guard infantry unit is wholly within 6 inches of its model, it receives the benefit of light cover. If it was already receiving the benefits of light cover, which is +1 save, right, from shooting, then each time an attack is made against that unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit rolls. So you could be in light cover. So you can get a +1 save and -1 to hit by being within 6 of the Nurgle pizza oven. I again, like, I don't want to. Oh, no, never mind. I'm not going to make that statement at all. Carry on. I feel like ovens. No, I'm not saying it. Doesn't matter.
No,
Yeah,
don't do it,
does
Rob.
it show? Does it show what the narrative of it is? I've not. I've got the article, but I can't really skim read it now.
I reckon you could definitely turn that into a bong. Scrunty Hugh has made a great point, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna go in 1 second.
It's got like a weird second bit. Like what like is there rules on where you place the second little chimney? Or like I don't know. It's a bit weird.
I don't.
And I'm
know.
not excited about it because I don't. You know my feelings on terrain in 40k. Like it should be part of the battlefield, not a piece of terrain that you take around with your army.
Oh,
It's
hell yeah, dude. This is
silly.
getting turned into a bong. Holy shit. I'm absolutely doing that. Gonna have that set behind me so we can get TOS banned.
Is that a Nurgle bong, not a pizza oven? I don't know if it's a bong.
It could be any. I mean,
It could be
can
anything. Let's be honest. I do like the idea that someone will put some sort of like smoke machine inside of it and like just get it like puffing little bits of smoke.
I'm
That
not
would be
putting
fun.
any smoke machine in it, mate.
Nick, Big Goldfish is here. Big love to you, Big Goldfish, by the way. Viking DX, nice to see you. This is your opportunity very quickly to, because this means more faction terrain, Nick. More faction terrain every time. That's actually quite a good buff, depending on the cost of it. What are your thoughts? Come on, just let everyone know quickly how you feel about faction terrain.
Well, I hate it because I don't like the idea that your army goes around and takes a piece of terrain with it. It's weird. Why would you have just like, if you're fighting on a Death World planet, randomly there's a weird Nurgle oven there. You're fighting in a city, all of a sudden your army turns up on patrol and then they bring the oven with it and plonk it down on the battlefield. It's just silly. I don't like it. Like Age of Sigmar does it where they force you in commons to buy the terrain because it's free, and you'd be stupid not to have a free set of rules. But generally in 40k, they're costed because of points. So, and most of the time they've not been very good. But maybe in 9th edition they're trying to turn it around and make them more points efficient. So we all have to have our own stupid bit of terrain on the table.
I like the terrain, Nick.
Like it.
Nick, terrain is good. It makes the board look sweet. I'm just going to say it. What is a drop pod but terrain from space?
That's a transport, not a piece of terrain. Yeah, I know it comes down and it's immobile after that. So it kind of is terrain. But like, yes, I agree. I think your terrain should look amazing, but like, have enough terrain on the board and make it look amazing, not have to bring your own army-specific piece that just sits there looking odd compared to everything else on the board. Like it ruins the theme of a board.
It does ruin the theme of a board, unless it's a
let's
Nurgle board.
Let's play in a Tau. Let's play in a Tau, cool futuristic Tau city. Mm-hmm. Nurgle versus Eldar. I bring my little weird oven, and you bring your little webway gate in this middle of a Tau city.
I mean, no one's bringing any webway gates, so I think we're okay.
You're safe,
I know,
you're
but
safe
it's
from
just,
the webway
it's
gate.
just a situation that would look.
I know.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like, listen, if nothing else, it's cool for kit bashing. Like, it's some fun new stuff to kit bash with. Nick, you got a Nurgle army. Maybe you could turn that into a cannon. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe you could stick that all over a Chaos Knight. Just go wild, get butt crazy. You know, just like, yeah. I think it looks cool anyway. I think they look fun because whether or not they're useful in the game, and Datcom's made a really great point about the fact you cannot deploy within 3 inches of a fortification. So getting wholly within 6 inches of something like this means you won't be able to stack a lot of stuff. And it's also nice to see that it's wholly within, and you can't string out a unit of 10 Marines, for instance, with one of them being back there. And, you know, you can't do that anyway, really, now with the new cohesion rules. But still, well, whatever. It's cool. It also means we're getting Death Guard very soon. Yeah? Very soon. This weekend, I assume, is when we're going to be getting Death Guard, which I'm hyped for. Yeah?
We only just got Space Wolves and Death Watch, please.
Tom, I'm with you. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. It's fucking tons of money.
The Space Marine Codex, yeah.
Like, do you know what? This is the time. Twitch chat, how do you feel about the release pace? That is the real question. Are you guys, Nick, Tom, give me your thoughts. You feel a bit overwhelmed? Twitch chat, what are you thinking?
Pain.
I don't think it's been. I mean, I feel like so far, like only the. I mean, hasn't only the Necron and Marine Codex been officially released, or the Necron and Death Watch, have they officially been released now?
Yeah, I've got them in my head.
Death Watch Space Wolves got released
Okay,
on the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I just don't feel overwhelmed because I've just not looked at them at all yet. Because I knew, like, we were doing the Necron review, and then we're in the middle of the Space Marine review. I've just not looked at them yet, so maybe I don't necessarily feel overwhelmed. And maybe because there's no tournaments happening in the minute, I don't feel the need to know them just yet.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like I want to keep track. One of my jobs for myself this weekend is to finish all 3 books completely, narrative and everything. So I'm up to date, which is arduous, fucking arduous. Like the Age of Sigmar stuff that I did from the Marathi book on Saturday, Sunday, into Monday was a lot. You know, like it's a ton. But however, everyone in the chat seems to not give a shit, and they're like, we just want more. It's also expensive as well. Like it's a ton of money. Obviously, I buy them for the show, so I bought them for the show. But it's it's expensive. And ultimately, I opened up the. It wasn't very much, like 15 quid. Although compared to a real book, like 15 quid is actually a fucking lot. But I opened up the Death Watch one, and it was pretty pathetic. Like, do you ever do that thing in a book? I did this the other day, actually. So I did that thing where you turn to where the rules are going to be. So you skip like the first 2/3.
Yeah.
Right, and I did that
almost right at the end of the book.
Yeah, I did that, and I was like, oh no, that's not true at all. Like, and then I kept skipping back, and then it's like, I think it's not even half. Like, I think it's less than half. Like, is lore, and I was a bit like, you cheap fucks, because that stuff's just free to write, you know, and it's like, so I don't know what to say about.
So just for what it's worth, I remembered I have not yet bought these books. The new ones. So I just signed in at my Games Workshop account and searched Death Watch. And I'm on the front page and I can't find the Death Watch Codex, except you can be sure as hell that the first thing that pops up is the collector's edition of the Death Watch Codex for £40.
That's all I want.
I don't want that.
Well, actually, one of the things I was going to start... when we start talking about Marines, Tom, click on Space Marines, yeah?
No.
Right? This is great. Just click on Space Marines and then click See All. Yeah? Right?
No.
And you'll see that everything is sold out. All of the new stuff, specifically, is just sold out. Apart from the tanks, but who gives a fuck about the tanks? Because they're shit anyway. Like, so...
Releases. Right.
And I know someone in the YouTube comments is going to be like, why do you say they're shit anyway, Rob? And it's like, well, it's because they are. So that's why. There's a lot of information stacked into that conclusion, but effectively...
Oh, it's out of stock online. Okay.
What? The Death Watch book?
The book.
Yeah. So this is the thing. We talked about
That's
this.
the broken one.
We talked about this. About this. So now, if you want the book, you can't have the book.
So, well, the problem I've now got, Rob, is that I want to buy enough stuff to put me over the the cost of postage.
Yeah.
So I could buy the limited edition Space Wolves one, or Gazgul Fracker is now a model.
Yes. Yes. Are you, me and Nick going Smash Bros, Gazgul, Stomper? That's the plan.
Can do. Yes, I'll screw it, or I'll DM you after the show, mate.
I was kind of joking.
All right, let's. I've just spent 60 quid on 2 models and a book.
It's pretty much. It's expensive. Thanks to Will Dockerell for subscribing. Big love to you. All right. So yeah, they're out, Nick. To answer your question, they're out and available in your hands. And this weekend, you'll be able to pre-order both the Death Guard book, which I imagine will be full price Codex price, which is now 30 quid, plus an expansion for the Blood Angels, which are is settled around the 15 quidish, 20 quidish mark. So there's another 50 quid of books this weekend. It is what it is. It is what it is. If you're just one of the guys out there, you don't have to collect them all, obviously. And the book format's at least nice, I guess, but you have to buy the book, which is weird. Anyway, whatever. We've talked about this loads, right?
Yeah, we've done that subject.
Henry Mendes says, my buddy couldn't get the new Necron Codex for our games last weekend, so we just ended up playing AOS instead.
Good choice. Surely I can still get the Deathwatch supplement at the normal Deathwatch cost, right? I don't have to buy 30 quid for a Space Marine Codex with Deathwatch in it.
No, because you need the supplement. You have to, if you want all the new rules.
Yeah, but I don't. It's still 15 quid.
Yeah.
Okay, the Space Wolf one is £17.50, so they're even scamming us on that one.
Yeah. So a big question in the chat is from Datcom is are we going to get new Death Guard dice? Oh my god, that is actually quite exciting. Did you get some, Nick?
Well, so when I did the Great Warhammer swap with Rick, he gave me the Orc dice. So I own the Orc dice now.
Oh, what, the old ones?
Maybe one day you can...
The plastic Orc ones. So they got the symbols are teeth, and then they've got a skull for the 1 and another weird skull for the 6.
Okay. Yeah, they're super weird. They're super weird dice. I don't like them at all. Nathan uses them all the time, and I never know what he's rolled.
Is this the guy that used the Luminous dice against me on stream? Well, next time I play you, mate, I'll use my Idenef dice.
Yeah.
And you can use your Luminef dice, mate.
All right, deal. I'll take that.
I still can't tell what these are.
What dice have you got there?
Those are my Idenef dice, but you can't see them because they're see-through.
Oh my god. They're the worst dice on the planet. I can't believe you have those.
You've got Luminef dice, mate. Shut the fuck up.
The Luminef dice, I think they're brilliant. No.
I kind of agree. They roll quite nicely.
Bunches of dice. If I was rolling 20, I don't think I would do that. But casting psychic powers or rolling off a first turn, stuff
they
like that.
They feel quite nice on the map, right?
However, if you're in the US, all dice are Nurgle dice right now, so that's fine. Yeah, it's all good.
That one didn't really land, so I appreciate the effort.
Sorry, I didn't know if I should go US specific or just talk about everywhere, but
no, we like the effort. We like the effort. It's good.
Thanks, I appreciate it. All right, should we talk Marines?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I just spent £60.
What, live on air? Good.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yep, literally live.
Did you not? What did you buy the limited edition Marine?
No, I bought Gazgul.
Oh right, yeah, that's way better.
Yeah, see, that's more acceptable. Yeah. All right, yeah, we'll have that. That's fine.
Yeah, that's the only acceptable thing. Right, so we're going to talk about the Marines and unit roles in Marines. If you guys haven't joined us before for unit roles in Marines, specifically, we've got a bunch of battlefield roles that we think units kind of fit into when they're playing a game. Especially we do a lot of coverage when we go to events, and we generally like to try and put these in our heads as fulfilling certain roles so that we can kind of explain that out to the audience quite well. And they fit into a bunch of different categories. You've got aggressive blocking, which is units that are going to go punch something off an objective or maybe even pin something back into their backfield. You've got defensive blocking, which is holding an objective really well, is pretty much what they are. They're there for support pieces. They're fairly obvious. Countercharge units, units that are in your backfield, that are maybe part of a gun line, but can charge out and punch things, which is quite useful. We've got damage dealers, and then that breaks down into against good infantry, against kind of Marine Terminator sort of level, and then also versus vehicles. And then you've got character suppression, and you've got CP generation. I think that's everything. That's all. That's the list.
Yeah, that's the list.
Yeah, you've got bullies as well, right?
Oh, bully pieces are my Ghazi, Ghoul, Thraka, the best bully piece. Right. So before we get on with the categories, have you guys got a TLDR or a top level view of the book, or any feelings that you want to throw out there before we get into more nitty gritty stuff?
Yeah, sure. I feel like there are so many units and there's a lot of overlap between roles that a lot of it is going to come down to what's the most efficient use of points to get this role right, rather than it being, oh, this unit does this thing and then this unit does this thing. We do slightly different things. And then it's also a case of the strength of a Marine book isn't necessarily in the individual units. The strength is in the actual overriding rules, right? So in your support pieces, in your successor traits and your base traits and things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could probably turn the stream off now.
Which is why you see things like Blade Guard veterans. You see a unit of 5 Blade Guard veterans, it's not like that unit is a pivot oil in and of itself. If you look at a Marine list, right, you don't say, oh, that's the one unit I need to watch most of the time. It's just a lot of little bits that are all annoying.
But are all supported by...
Yeah. And
I think a good example that I thought of when you said that is, if you think about an Eldar list, they will have a unit of Shining Spears that largely operates on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they have some psychic powers that might Guide and Doom that might be applied to it, but generally their strength is the unit itself. Am I wrong? Or is that makes sense?
I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah. But then the pivot is on the facet, right? That support section on its own is so powerful that you absolutely need to get rid of it. Whereas a lot of the Marine supporting is overlapping stuff.
Yeah, I think a good example is Harlequin jet bikes, right? They're plug and play. They do the role that they do in their own army or allied in. Well, not allied in, but do you know what I mean? Their own faction. So they do that. Whereas Marines, see, it's okay if I give my kind of TLDR? Because actually, I was quite intimidated about this book. I was like, "Fuck, this is absolutely loads to try and process, break down." And actually, I think it's really fucking simple. It's basically anything that's an old Marine, just throw it in the bin. Not at home, obviously. I don't mean throw it in the bin at home. I'm sorry, I don't mean like that. I just
throw
mean
it in the post to my house.
Yeah, it's so quite clear. It's so the points efficiency thing, both in additional rules and also in points efficiency. It's so clear, and also just in utility. It's so clear that the new stuff just does its role better. When we get on to talking about assault intercessors and you talk about Blade Guard veterans, the points difference is nominal, really. For actual eventual output, it really does start to change when you talk about more faction specific stuff, stuff with Blood Angels, etc., etc. But I really do think that it's just someone out there will be yeah, but what if I really want to do a vet squad? And it's cool, you can, but it doesn't not that it doesn't matter, and you can and you should. It's just those there's so many of these units do the same job. They're all the same toughness pretty much, but they're not, and that's an important point. They all hit the same. They've all pretty much got the same save. Again, that's not true all the time, and so that's really important. And so really it just comes down to how can you build the most efficient army around these units, which is very, very different when we compared it to the Necron thing. Because Necron, it's am I going to try and manipulate or make a big deal out of reanimation, or am I not? There's those pivot points in the structure of the rules in the Necron book that you build stuff around, whereas the Marine book, there isn't really that, I don't think. It's just they all do the same job really, really well all the time. That's my kind of TLDR. I don't know, Nick, if you've got any thoughts.
Well, I was also intimidated by the sheer vast amount of units that are in the book. And also, I think one thing to point out about this particular review is it's kind of just on a base Marine book. So a lot of Marine armies will be, this is the base with extra supplement on top. So this isn't a definitive review of Space Marines. It's just the Space Marine Codex that we've got in front of us at the minute. I was most excited about the Phobos side of the book. I also have completely sort of disregarded the Firstborn stuff from my thoughts, because I also feel like this, the last codex was Yeah, they're still kind of relevant old Marines, but this codex I think is definitely the one where they've told them to go away. The next codex will be the final nail in the coffin, I think, where they'll possibly not even be in the codex potentially. So yeah, I'm really attracted to the Phobos side of this book, because
Same.
it's mainly focused on like more shenanigans and trickery, whereas the other normal Primaris stuff is focused on general, just moving about, shooting, and having captain and lieutenant buffs. Whereas I like the Phobos stuff because it's more about movement and board control and stuff like that.
Heavily so, and I was going to talk about that in a moment. And also, Alandril and Ixtab and all you angels. I do know that's why I brought up Vanguard vets. Like I
was commenting on the chat, that was all, mate.
Yeah,
I just said I just seen the points cost of the upgrades on the Vanguard vets. Yeah. Holy moly!
But I don't think that was intended. Like, is the point? Like,
no.
Like shit, that's what I mean. There's going to be inside this book fringe cases, where they didn't they undercosted one of those units from the past, right? Or whatever it might be. But then when you look at it, you just think, like especially when you talk about something like Intercessors and the strat to shoot twice, right? Like, they're so keying in to those new units. It's not that you can't do good stuff with the old stuff. That's not my point. It's just when I looked at this, I thought, well, do you know what? I can really make this a lot simpler for myself. Like, I really can. Do you know what I mean? I can just make this much simpler and just, focus on where I think that they put their focus, because that's what it seems to be.
Yeah.
So, are you putting Terminators in with Firstborn Marines, Rob? No, I think Terminators fulfill their own role as well, but then I feel like Blade Guard vets are just, I mean, especially having come off the back of the Necron book and looking at some of those Necron units, you're just like, thinking about my poor Orc boys. I'm just like, I can't believe that's a unit that you're allowed to have. For how cheap it is outrageous. 18 wounds, toughness 5. I think it comes in at 210 points for 6.
Yeah, but you don't take 6, you take 5 to avoid the blast, so you get 175. The same cost as Wraiths.
Yeah, so they're just nuts. Compared to an Orc boy unit which just won't survive a thing. I mean, it does survive sometimes.
I can go through, again. There's one page with 4 different types of Primaris chaplain on it. So we could definitely get rid of Gravis, guys. There we go. That's half a book gone. Look, Primaris chaplain on bike, chaplain in Terminator armor, chaplain, Primaris tech marine. Oh my word, there's so many of these, dude.
Anyway, so yeah, that's my kind of top down.
I think the only thing that Primaris don't have now is a flying combat unit.
Yes.
I think that's the only thing that hasn't really been Primarist. They've got plenty of ground troops and infantry and tanks that shoot and fight. They don't have an assault squad which flies. They've got the inceptors and the other guys with the cannons are the suppressors, but they don't have a true flying.
The inceptors, is it right? With the lots of shots.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is the normal apothecary is now better than the Primaris apothecary.
Yeah.
The firstborn or whatever it's called. Yeah.
It's like shades. Also, big fan of Jump Pack Infantry, Nick, because as you know, I'm a big fan of Hammer of Wrath. I think that's one of those things that is sexy. And also, but I think that keys into, again, the book's so big, I think that keys into that when you go and play something more specific, like when you go and play Blood Angels, right? I think that works well. I mean, it works well in any of them, but I don't know. Anyway, so let's talk about some of those unit roles and break those down. So aggressive blocking was the one that I thought I'd like to talk about the most for me.
Yes.
Because I think that maybe structurally, also talking about the book very quickly, like you said, Nick, the fact that you can, there's lots of vehicles in this book, but I actually think other than dreadnoughts, you kind of start scaling off away from them because you have to go and hold objectives, which means you do need dudes, and the dudes are expensive enough in this. You don't really hoard them up. They're not super expensive. So you generally end up building something and go and take objectives, which is normally men or like Marines in some way that are going to go take and sit on the objectives. However, Phobos gives you probably we should start off with Phobos, the ability to just do whatever the fuck you want at the start of the game. Do you want to talk about Phobos generally?
Yes, I want to talk about Phobos.
Yeah,
for sure. So, so I don't know what unit you were thinking of talking about for aggressive blocking, but is it infiltrators?
Well, what I mean, any
Or
for aggressive.
about Phobos in general.
Anything that can. So let me just read the rule out. So anything that can use concealed positions during deployment. When you set up a unit, if everyone on this unit has this ability, then it can be set up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from an enemy deployment zone. So the ability to screen before the game starts is huge, right? Like we've seen it done with Nurglings, we've seen it done with other stuff. And then if you take is it the captain? The guy that means that you can't within 12. Where is he? What's his name?
Oh, so yeah, so they have what you mean scrambler omni scramblers.
Yes, omni scramblers.
Yeah, so you can't deep strike within 12 of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes your board control even stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't even have to specialize to get those in your list. You don't have to do anything. Just so your ability to aggressively block in this army, ignoring going and taking objectives, just control the board state, the state of the board. Invictus have got the tactical warsuits have also got thingy as well, haven't they? The ability to do the same concealed positions.
So I think for Marines, I think it's scouts can do it. But obviously they're elites now, so they don't have objective secured, and they're old Marines. They got 4+ save and 1 wound, so they're not very good. Incursors, which are Phobos, can do it, and Infiltrators, or Baron Saturday in the chat calls them Winfiltrators, can do it. And the tactical warsuit can do it as well. I think that's it. Maybe in Raven Guard they have a way to have more advanced deploying stuff through a stratagem, I believe, or at least moving 9 inches in from your deployment zone. But yeah, they're the 3 main ones that can do it. Your Incursors, Winfiltrators, and tactical warsuit. My opinion is that Infiltrators are the best unit for it, because they have a unit upgrade. The two upgrades to the unit. So you can have the Helix Adept, who's like a baby apothecary. So the first damage that you take in the turn, I think it is, or the battle round, is reduced to 0. So that might just be on 1 bolter shot, but it could be like a high damage weapon. Yeah. Potentially. So it's just an extra tiny little bit of resilience that unit has. They also have, which I think is an amazing upgrade, comms array. So that means that if there is a Phobos lieutenant or a Phobos captain on the battlefield, no matter where they are in relation to the captain on the battlefield, they will get the reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to wound. So that means you can have your captain lieutenant in one corner and your infiltrators in the other corner, and they'll still get the reliability from your captain and lieutenant, making their combat and shooting reliable. And you can move them wherever you need on the board. So I think that upgrade is fantastic. The other key thing that I think is good for Phobos in general is because if you're going down the Phobos route and you have the Phobos captain, he can have a warlord trait called the Lord of Deceit, which is very similar to the Deceiver rule, where at the start of the game, at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins, so you know who's going first or second, you can redeploy 3 Phobos units. So you can either deploy them again on the table, or you can put them into strategic reserve. So in the TTS game that me and Tom played last week, I had 3 units of 10 infiltrators, and I had this warlord trait. So it meant during deployment, I can just put infiltrators out on the board. It doesn't matter where I put them; they're just arbitrarily placed, because I know I'm gonna get to redeploy them once I know who's going first or second. So I can put them in the most advantageous position for me. Once I know who's going first or second. So if I'm going first, I need to be aggressive. I can put them right on the 9 inch away, move up, shoot, charge. Or if I'm going second, I can pull them back a little bit and put them all to one side, or hide them, ready to jump out and shoot stuff or go on some objective. So I think it gives you such that warlord trait and that advanced deploy from the infiltrators or incursors, if you're going down that way, I think is really, really strong, because board position is so key. Yes, damage wins you games, but be where you are on the board and controlling those objectives, that's what really sort of wins you the games.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, it keys in with some of their strengths when we get on to talking about them later. Like, stuff that you might put in reserve, like, that might be some of your big damage dealers or something that's in the teleportarium or whatever. Like, some of those things that you might keep off the board. Controlling that board space early means that turns 2-3, you're being able to drop your stuff where you want to go. Like, I messaged John earlier. I was like, oh, do you fancy some 40k TTS soon? He was like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to bring my Gene Stealer Coats. I was like, I'm going to try some Marine stuff out. Yeah, and he was just like, if you do that thing where I can't deploy, I'm just not going to play with you. Fuck off. Right? And that's super fair, because if someone's needing to take advantage of a certain, like, if, you know, like, the jump's a big deal, right? Like, the jump's a big deal for the All Boys generally, although, you know, boards are small, and I know that's a big conversation. But being able to control that so I can't do that, or I can't be involved in that, is a big deal. But similarly, opening that space up for yourself for later turns is super key. And the thing is I don't even know if that's necessarily the strongest part about the book, but the book can do that at any opportunity, which is wild, right?
Yeah, and there's some books that can't do that. Like, I think Orcs don't have an advanced deploy.
Nope.
Death Guard naturally don't. Obviously, you know Nurglings, but they're technically from the Demons book, and you have to summon Nurglings to a pure Death Guard army. And I don't think they have any advanced deploy stuff. There's other armies that don't have any advanced deploy. Necrons don't, but obviously they've now got the 6-inch pre-game move, which isn't quite the same. So yeah, just having it and having lots of stuff that is good at it is a really big strength for the book in general.
Yeah, like I think you're right. I think, yeah, as soon as you talk about that and you think that, you know that they could do that, it changes the shape of the game. Because you can build like the strongest, most damagey output army from this book. You absolutely can. But applying that in the right places is going to be pretty tough. So I think dropping some points so you can control the board space early is super key. So, like, if I was going to give, like, aggressive blocking, like, a rating, I'd give Marines, like, an S. Like, they're just top of the pile for the ability to aggressive block. Before you even talk about things that are going to take stuff off objectives. Like, in my opinion.
Have you guys... sorry, I had to make sure I was staying hydrated. Have you guys spoken about Inceptors yet?
We have not, but what we did just talk about was the fact that the board control is really open, and I was going to talk about Inceptors later, but we could talk about them now because.
No, I mean, as in the is that the name of the other trip unit that scouts?
Incursors.
Incursors. There we go.
Yeah.
That's what I was
No,
going for.
what do you want to say about Incursors?
No, it's just I was wondering if Nicholas thought there was a world in which Incursors are the preferable choice to intercept the other unit that does the thing that is called in. Fine.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because the only reason I'm asking is because if you're taking a unit specifically to do that blocking, just to do that blocking, that's all you need, and you want that role specifically, and you want to do that as cheaply as you can. The Incursors is slightly cheaper. I get that you're getting a lot more for your buck with the Infiltrators, but do you think there's a world in which if you're really looking to scrimp points, but you really want something to block, where you could take
it? Like if you were just going like, oh, I just want, because I reckon you can block. If you wanted to like really block up the midfield, like no man's land between deployment zones, I think 2 units of 5 Marines is probably sufficient to block off quite a lot of that board. So maybe yes, if just 2 units of Incursors, or maybe 2 units of Scouts, because that's probably even cheaper just to fulfill that role of blocking up the space early. You probably don't need Infiltrators, but my personal view, I really like Infiltrators and the Phobos stuff. So I personally, if I was going for Marines, would lean heavily into them. But yeah, I agree. Like if you just want to fulfill that role of blocking board space early with just some cheap units, then it's probably better to go for Incursors.
Because also if you think about something like Nurgle, like Nick was talking about, it's like big like combat blocks stacked inside a Rhino. Like if you're able to control the board space well enough so that like the Rhino can't go as far as you would initially want it to do to drop those Marines in. Like if you're pinning people back that early, like it's just obnoxious. It is what it truthfully is, and also like really useful when you get on to using things like Inceptors later on, right? Because you're then giving yourself the space. So yeah, I would say aggressive blocking, Infiltrators, or not Incursors, but any of the like just that rule and all of the Phobos stuff and everything that can use concealed positions is basically brilliant. Points dependent. effectively.
Mm.
Yeah. Carp Hunter says, Honest Wargamer, hi guys, it's the A-Team tonight. Oh, that's nice. Love your content, guys, especially when it's you three. It's the nuts. Thanks, Carp Hunter. Let's
thanks,
go.
man.
Whoa, that's you sweetheart. Dude.8 asks a really good question, though. How is it going to interact at events when half the entry are Marines and they're all fucking with each other's deployment? I wonder if the general consensus is, from a lot of people, that they're going to take a lot of the Phobos stuff, though. I feel like that's not necessarily what people are going to go for, even though I think it's pretty pivotal. You got any thoughts, Nick and Tom? Oh, wait, hold on. Let's ask Reese.
He needs to give us a 10-minute TED talk. Guys, don't. Like, it's just malicious.
The thing about deploying there is, Rob...
It doesn't achieve anything. What are you doing?
Sorry. Go on, what have you guys got? What are your thoughts? In the mirror. In the Phobos mirror, what are your thoughts? But that's true of any... Like, you play against Nurglings, right? Like, and you've got Phobos. Like, it's the same.
I think like if it's Phobos versus Phobos, a lot of it will depend on a coin flip, because the first person to put a Phobos unit down, particularly if you've got like a 10-man unit, well, I suppose you can't string it out as much as before, but you could almost deny most of the no man's land with one unit, so they can't deploy in there.
Yes. Yeah. Tom, you got any thoughts?
No.
Why not? Have a thought. That's the point of the show. We just spent a
load of time. You just went through it, mate.
All right.
If I have a thought, I have a full monologue, and I don't have a full monologue, so therefore no thoughts.
Okay, fair enough. What I like
I don't have to have an opinion.
Okay, that's true. Fine. What does Twitch chat think? I'll ask them instead.
They have to have an opinion.
Yes. Baron Saturday in the chat just had an amazing idea. So you could, if you had a 10-man unit of infiltrators and the warlord trait, Lord of Deceit, you can, if you go first, you string that 10 completely out along the board. So like ignoring the what they call the coherency rules, and then just use, and then that blocks off that deployment space during deployment. And then as soon as you use the warlord trait, you redeploy them back into a cohesive bunch.
That works. That works. I think that's really useful, especially for bringing on, again, just for bringing on units later. That's all I'm not going to change my mind on that. All right, okay. So what about for taking objectives? Aggressive blocking units that are going to go take objectives. Tom, you got any thoughts on this?
Aggressive units that go and take objectives.
Yes.
Well, I haven't really looked at this section in depth, but I still really like Vanguard veterans. But I want to talk about them a bit more in a bully capacity, because a lot of those units that you're going to be pushing forwards just to try and lob people straight off objectives are going to be fulfilling that bully role, right?
Yeah. Go for it. Talk to me about them.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll just do bullies then, I guess. So Vanguard veterans, I've been having a look at them. I did a podcast with VWTC Squadcast the other day, and we were talking to a bunch of Marine players, one from Sweden, one from Australia, and one from the USA. You can go and check that out if you want some more details on it. But Vanguard veterans are an incredibly points-efficient unit. So they are effectively jump pack firstborn Marines, so they are 2 wound models. They are 19 points to model base, which means that they are 9.5 points per wound.
Oh, I love that stat, by the way. Points per wound is one of my new favourite stats.
Yeah. They are toughness. They are still Marine bodies, so their toughness 4, 3 up save. But then you add in the reworked Storm Shield, so they are plus 4 points to their cost for the Storm Shield. So just adding that on, they are 23 points, meaning they are now 11.5 points per wound, but now they have a 2+ armor save and a 4+ invulnerable save from the Storm Shield. So that's incredibly sticky to get rid of, especially on a unit that has a good threat, projection of power, because they have a 12-inch movement and then they can charge. So therefore, effectively 24-inch range threat. You can then give them a Thunder Hammer as well, and the Thunder Hammer only costs 12 points, so you can still mix those in and it not cost too much. You can stick 4 of those into your Vanguard vet squads, and you have got 50 points spent on those guys. That makes them infinitely better as a threat. You can then stack it with things like the support pieces, such as the Primaris chaplain on bike. And so you can give that chaplain a canticle of hate, so characters and core within 6 inches. Now, I need to check to see if Vanguard veterans are core. It's absolutely worth double checking that one. And I need to see how many pages I need to go past in order to get there. And I'm definitely not padding this while I flick through about 6 pages.
We'll see who make it veteran intercessor squad. Is that what you want?
No, look for Vanguard veterans, Rob.
Oh, no problem. They are not. They are core.
There you go. So you can give them +2 inches to their charge range, and you don't get just +2 inches to their charge range. So that effectively makes them much more consistent with the charges. So if you're looking at, say, a 9-inch charge, which is, if you have a 9-inch charge rerollable, that's about a 50% chance of you succeeding on that one because you reroll it with the CP. But suddenly now that's a 7-inch charge with every roll if you use the CP for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can absolutely effectively realistically get a 21-inch range charge consistently every single time. So you take that piece, you lob it into the center of the board, and you're just like, well, now you've got 20 wounds with a 2+ armor save and a 4+ invulnerable save. It's not easy to deal with for most things.
It is not easy to deal with at all. So, and you would just pin people back into their objective with that unit.
Well, I mean, you just push people off the center because now you've got to remove that. You can try shooting it. Well, it's still kind of hard to remove with shooting, but also you can play around the terrain, which is quite good. You also have that chaplain on the bike start behind them as well. That's giving them a lot of stuff. You then could try and charge them. Good luck, by the way. that's not ideal for you. But it also stacks really well with the secondaries that I wanted to talk about because that's one of the things I've prepped well as well. So my favorite Marine secondary, bar none, is No Mercy, No Respite. It's basically a free 15 points every single game.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it just is. Like we talked about this when it first came out, right? And so, but like, there's no way. Especially, it's also quite sad having seen the Necron ones and understanding that Marines are just going to get 15 points for just playing the way the Marines play. Like,
I mean, it's not even that.
It's a significant advantage.
Play.
All right,
you get 1 point for not failing morale tests or falling back.
Yeah, it's true.
Where are you failing morale tests or falling back?
It's a huge. It's a huge buff. It's a huge buff, right?
I mean, when we played last week, Tom, I fell back a couple of times,
you didn't have to.
I failed a morale test.
You didn't have to fall back, and you failed a morale test because you were unlucky.
But it was better for me to do it,
right?
So.
But it's barely better. It was like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't think it was that much of an impact. So you can just stay in your Marines. You still get a bunch of attacks because you're Primaris most of the time. And when you get, even then, let's say you do want to fall back for a turn. Fine, you just kill a vehicle. Or you kill a monster and you get that point back. So you get 1 point if you destroy a vehicle, monster, or character during that battle round. You get 1 point if you didn't fail a morale check and you didn't fall back that battle round. And you get 2 points if you have any unit from your army wholly within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. And that can be a character.
It's pretty good.
2 points!
Good. Yeah,
and then you can go second. You can go second and say, this is mine, I have 2 points.
I feel like it's quite sad, truthfully, and Diff in the chat, big love to you, by the way. Everyone shout out to Diffy. Was saying that he hates that secondary because it was the beginning and the end of faction-specific secondaries. Because, like, I feel the Necron ones were fine.
There's one really good one in there. I can't remember what it was called, but it was one really good one in there.
But I feel like if you I can understand points being wrong, and maybe even getting a couple of the the couple of units and the weapon profiles may be wrong. You know, I'm giving them as much credence. I'm trying to be nice. Basically, I'm like, I can't see how they should get any of it wrong. But we'll just say that's fine. But where you could really sell the beauty of the structure of the game would be in those, and I mean they didn't do loads either, in those 3 faction specific secondaries. That's the way to kind of really make the armies play differently to each other, pose a problem to your opponent, while at the same time, and I really don't think that they did. So far, I don't feel like they've done a very good job at it, which I think is quite sad for that specific one.
And what I liked about most of the secondaries is it's like one specific thing that's very hard that you've got to go and do, but this secondary is it's got 3 bullet points that are all different things to do that score you a couple of points. It feels like it's almost as much admin as keeping track of the primaries on its own, or other ones like that. It's not specific. It's very just open. Yeah, it's very broad, and you don't have to do an awful lot to achieve it. Well, particularly for a couple of them.
So, you got any more thoughts on the secondary, Tom?
No, it's broken.
Oh, it's a good point. I'm not sure if it's been bandied around circles particularly much, generally, but yes, very strong. Hopefully, there's an FAQ for it. Okay, so you talked about vets for pushing stuff off of objectives. You got any other thoughts on that particular role?
On the bully unit role,
Yeah.
Not particularly. I mean, you talked about the Blade Guard veterans already. They're not like traditional bullies in that you can just run up at people and say, well, my projection of power is massive and it's going to really hurt if you go near it, right? It's not one of those.
No.
Because you've still got to move 6 inches and then you've got to, charge and it's like 18-inch range, which is still good, especially on the smaller boards. But at the same time, it's just like, oh, well, it's not like a Death Star that's running down your throat.
Well, I mean, that's probably where I'm going to talk about. Like, can I talk about my fave thing so far?
Yeah.
It is Psychic Fortress. Like,
I love Psychic Fortress.
I think where Nick is at with the ball control, I think is excellent. And I'd like to talk about Psychic Fortress and then the troop choices, because I think it's actually like fairly important, because obviously all the troop choices are also core. But this is Psychic Fortress warp charge value 6. Manifested then until the start of your next psychic phase. While a friendly chapter is within 6 inches of the psyker, they have a 5-up invulnerable save. Now, it's a pretty low casting value, like it's 6, so you could reliably like hope to get this off. And the first thing I looked at was like, because even on even in the troop choices, like it's a lot of, like if you wanted to play Marines tomorrow, you're like, what troops do I get? Do I get assault intercessors? Do I get intercessors? Do I get heavy intercessors? Do I get baby Marines? Like, what the fuck am I choosing to do? And as soon as you start to look at it, as I did earlier, like you look at Psychic Fortress, I just don't know how I don't build an army around that. Like, and I don't mean the whole army. I just take one librarian, and then I have a bunch of intercessors. I'm going to talk about intercessors versus assault intercessors versus heavy intercessors in a minute. But like, you just have that, and you're just like, cool, I now have a 5-up invuln save. And you just kind of walk forward. Those are your guys who they're not even special. You're just using them to be in your... And they're not expensive. They're just the guys in your army. But they're also brilliant because your intercessors can fire twice. Like, it's just nuts. It's nuts that is in there and available. Having things.
Reason I wouldn't necessarily like it is because it's a psychic power, and unless you can make that. So when I was building chaos armies around warp time, you have to make that casting, because you're building an army around it. You need to make that reliable as fuck, else it's just going to go wrong. So I don't necessarily like building an army around a psychic power to give you a 5-up invuln if it's only going to happen. What is it, casting a 7 or a 6? So it's like 50-50, or it's like 60% of the time it's going to get off. But there's going to be like what, 30%? I don't know what the mass is, something like that. 30% of the time it's just not going to work. So I wouldn't necessarily like to build an army around it unless you can make it reliably.
But the opportunity cost isn't loads. Like I understand what you mean. Don't make it a pivot, but like you're already like. So I was looking at some other stuff, right? Right. So if I had 10 heavy intercessors, that rocks me 280 points, right? And then if I just take 10 intercessors, that takes me 200 points. Now, no special weapons, no upgrades, just that. And I was just comparing it, and I know it's an older book now because it's Orcs since the last edition. But I'm like putting that in my head, and I'm like, cool. It's 200 points for 20 wounds at toughness 4 with their 3-up armor save. I could also then potentially have them, like, with a pretty small like footprint as well, truthfully, if you compare it to something like 30 Orcs, boys, or some other stuff, like a fairly small footprint, but I can get 2 of those squads very comfortably near a librarian, so I just have to pay 80 points, or 100, whatever it is, 100 and something points, for the librarian, 95, sorry, for the librarian, and then I'm just like, cool, now they have a 5-up invuln. Like, most of the time. You're right, Nick, not all of the time, and maybe in the pivotal turn, and then I was just like looking at it and I was like, this isn't even lots of my army. This is like the core bit of my army I need to do. This is the boys bit before I buy the toys bit, and it's fucking bonkers. Like, I was just blown away, honestly. And then I was like, oh, well, actually, how much are heavy intercessor squads? And it's 80 points more for 10 more wounds, for a pip of toughness on the whole army, and for their guns to have a better strength value, be up at strength 5 as opposed to strength 4. And I was like, yeah, man, I've put in a list, or roughly, because I don't know how this isn't just brilliant, is you just have a 110 of heavy intercessors, and then depending on how many other toys that you want, 2 squads of I've got 2 squads of heavy intercessors and 1 squad of intercessors, and just them be your like core. We're going to take the center of the board, because you compare them to assault marines. The assault intercessors. The assault intercessors only get like an extra attack and AP on their attacks, which I know only, like, and access to some stratagems. I know only, like that's quite a lot. Yeah, of course. Like, but personally, why not shoot all the time and then fight some of the time, as opposed to just fight some of the time? So I just don't see how I don't see how assault intercessors ever make it into a list one time. Kind of my thoughts. Which is where I was at. So for me, aggressive blocking and maybe even defensive blocking would be that those troop choices, those heavy intercessors and those intercessor squads. That's what I'd put in those roles, and then I'd just have that support Libby, because it's just it's an insane psychic power, like insane. Like I don't know. I've egged it on.
I definitely agree with you. I think heavy intercessors are good for that role. I think I personally would possibly not have the psycho in there, just because I would probably prefer to have 100 points or something else and just forgo and just go, well, if someone comes at me with loads of AP, I'm just gonna just take it anyway. Hopefully I can just hide from them. Yeah, but I can see your point. Having like a 5 up in the bubble on the troops that are either taking the centre ground or holding your home objective is obviously makes them more resilient, and heavy intercessors are already pretty resilient anyway, so you're kind of doubling down on their resilience. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's just what blew me away. And it's dumb amount of wounds. It's 30 wounds, like 30 wounds at toughness 5 with a 5 up invulnerable save. You
can also do transhuman physiology on them to make them even more resilient, depending on what chapter you took them in. If you took them in Iron Hands, is probably the most resilient Space Marine chapter that we have. They get a 6 up DPR on that. Iron Hands also have access to the Flesh is Weak stratagem to give them a 5 up DPR. So you could be how many 30 wounds in a unit, toughness 5, 3 up armor save, transhuman, 5 up DPR,
5 up. Yeah.
Like you can stack.
What's the 5 up DPR come from? Iron Hands.
If you're Iron Hands, there's a stratagem. Flesh is Weak.
Shut up.
That's only for 1 unit, though, right?
Yeah. It's just on 1 unit.
It's
so
not like you can get the apothecary and get a 5+ DPR or wide now, because they've changed that.
That's still fucking nuts, though. That's so many overlapping rules, making them just like outrageous. And I mean, if you wanted to, I don't think you should. You could like obviously double up, have the apothecary behind it, and like fucking heal some guy back in. But I don't know. It's weird because they feel like that they shouldn't be that survivable because they're in the troop slot and they've got a great gun. That's the other thing as well. You're not versus intercessors, you're also getting a strength 5 gun. So in a mirror or against other Marines, you win them on 3s, which is, I know that's not like it's enough of a dice swing that I think it's worth talking about.
But I think also part of this conversation, the fact that intercessor squad can shoot twice maybe makes their output slightly better than.
Well, that's why I put. Yeah, that's why I put one. That's why I put 1 in there. I had 2 heavies and then 1 intercessor squad, and I was like, and that isn't even like that combo. If you even call it a fucking combo, it's not even that. That's 760 points, and you put the librarian in. 760, so it's 860 points. So it's half your army, but it's 90 wounds on a 3-up save. 60 of those wounds are at toughness 5, and you've still got 1,100 points to spend. You've got some anti-psyker, and it just goes on from here. Inceptor squads, Blade Guard vets, the points are fucking outrageous for what you get, in my opinion. Anyway, so that's.
There's also for the heavy intercessors, there's also a stratagem specifically for Gravis armor that gives you +1 save against damage 1 weapons. So that's just another tool that they have to be more resilient. Yeah.
It's just gangster. And it would look cool as well. That's the other thing I was thinking about. It's very heresy. It's very old school. It's very just there's just some Marines and they're just going to walk forward into the middle and just take it. And they can fight okay as well. Anyway, that's my aggressive blocking units. I know I covered some good spicy stuff there, so that's all for me. I'm sorry I took them off your hands if any of you wanted them. Tom, you got another unit or another role you want to talk about?
No, we've done the Inceptors. We've done before the units. Am I okay just to finish up the support section as we? Well, I say I'll finish up the support section. I'll finish up my section of the support section.
Please do.
Chief Apothecary. So earlier I was talking about how the base apothecary I think is better than the Primaris apothecary, and that's because the base apothecary can be made into a chief apothecary, but the Primaris one cannot. So what the chief apothecary allows you to do is it allows you to heal twice as an apothecary rather than just healing once. You can also take the selfless healer warlord trait if you are a chief apothecary, and that allows you to heal 3 wounds instead of D3. So it's very, very consistent. And it means that the combat revival stratagem only costs 0 CP, which is you can bring back a model from a vehicle or biker unit within 3 inches with full wounds remaining. Okay, I have to check the FAQ then. Sorry. I'll let you guys go with something. I'll check the FAQ. Obviously, as you guys know,
so the apothecary keyword to the Primaris apothecary, so he can now be a master.
The Primaris one can. Okay, there we go. That's fine. Either way, that's pretty good. So what that means is when you are healing stuff, you now don't have to roll to heal. You just do it automatically. You can't bring back models without using the stratagem, but you can heal twice for 3 wounds. So you can heal 1 squad 3 wounds, heal another squad 3 wounds. And then also, if you spend 1 CP to give this guy just a warlord trait, you are getting that CP back so long as you would be using the combat revival strat at some point in the game anyway.
Yeah, as long as you use it once.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just getting that value and you're healing for free, right? But the main thing is, just as a base apothecary, you still give out of 6+ DPR to any friendly units within 3 inches.
Yeah,
it's
so
not just models, it's
absolute
units.
buff machine, isn't he?
Oh yeah, it's insane. Like you just stick anything near it, and like they get a 6+ DPR, and then you just heal whatever you want back anyway. Yeah, and it's really, really cheap.
So I think if we apply him to like Rob's base that he's just talked about, like his 20 assault intercessors and the normal intercessors, like you can put that apothecary in there. He's rezzing one of those intercessors if it dies. He's healing 2 units if there's any wounds on them, and he's giving them a 6 up DPR, which means you don't have to go for Iron Hands. You can go for a different chapter that is has more damage output, like maybe Imperial Fists to get more shots at the bolters or something else.
And Scribbler's brought up the Deathwing Apothecary. You just deep strike it, you heal 2 units, and you bring Deathwing like Knight back.
Big shout out to Gremma, by the way, for subscribing. Appreciate that, and thanks for everyone for joining us live. Loads of love. Yeah, the apothecary's nuts. Like, not including its interactions with like the janky rules, like that, and also like the value of. It's quite weird, right? Do you know how much an apothecary costs?
I can check for you.
Compared to the 65-point Pain Boy, because when you have that 6 up DPR on like Toughness 5 Marines, is a lot better than like who have like kick-ass armor saves versus like.
Yeah. Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Have a guess at how much a base apothecary costs.
80, 90 points. It should be like.
So the base one costs 75.
Yeah.
The Primaris one costs 80. And then I believe it's 15 points to make it a chief apothecary.
Yeah.
So that is 90 points or 95
I mean, that's great. Also, just little side
note. And just stick
it
in the middle of the board and you get 10 points for free.
Basically. And also, side note, that model looks fucking gangster.
Yeah.
Like, that's a cool looking model. I saw the old Chief Apothecary earlier, and I was like, oh no.
If I take a supplement codex, can I take the secondaries from this book?
Yes.
So you're telling me I could just drop 2 squads of 5 Deathwing Knights in the center with an apothecary and just sit there for 5 turns?
Yes.
And get 10 secondary points for free. Yeah. And then I'll get 5 more if I don't have fail any morale checks or need to fall back.
Yes.
Why not?
I mean, because you can still fall back. You lose 1 point. So, like, is that worth more than 1 point to me? Possibly. And then you just get it back if you kill a vehicle or a monster or a character, which you probably will.
Well, but yeah. I mean, all solid. But again, I would encourage everyone to go and look at the old...
It's very wobbly, Rob. It's very wobbly.
I mean, if you're a Marine player, you're like fucking... You got 2 pistols and you're firing them out into the air. But yeah, it's very, very strong. Very strong. Not including the stratagems, obviously, that you can use.
They included the combat revival one, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big creak. I'm getting heavy.
So yeah, another great... So all 3 of the, ignoring the captains and lieutenants for a minute, although like if you wanted to, which I thought was super cool. I don't think it's necessarily brilliant, but there was a couple of builds early 8th edition which pretty much relied on like using the ancients. So if you died, you could make a shot before you like die, sort of a situation. You could, I mean, you can run the apothecary, the librarian, the ancient, and the what's it called? The litanies dude. I forget.
Chaplain.
A chaplain. You could run them all behind just a horde of dudes, yeah, and have a pretty solid army. Like, you know, just because of all the buffs that you're generally giving out.
By the way, how good is it that the chaplain can now move 12 inches?
Yeah, great. Oh,
it's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it can give you a full list of buffs. So I can give you the Aussie version of the Primaris Chaplain. Are you ready for it?
Please do.
So you got Litany of Hate base, which is reroll to hit in melee with core and the characters within 6 inches. That's a base litany. They are taking Excitation of Rage, which is reroll 1s to wound for range attacks shooting at the closest enemy unit for 1 core or character unit within 6 inches. Master of Sanctity, which is no 1 more and cast 1 more litany. Now, both of these, the American one and the Aussie one, had the Imperium Sword, which is reroll charges and get +1 strength and attacks on charges and heroic interventions. Then the Aussie one itself had Paragon of Iron, which is have an extra Warlord trait, which is the Iron Hands version. Had Canticle of Hate, which is characters in core within 6 inches get +2 to their charge range. So now he is re-rolling charges with +2 to his charge and +1 strength and attacks. And then it also had the Benediction of Fury, which replaces the Crozius and gives you +2 strength, AP -2, damage free flat, and unmodified 60 to wound, cause 1 additional mortal wound. So that's +1 AP and damage based off a normal Crozius. And you had Student of History, which is piling an extra 6 inches. And then the American one had the Litany of Hate, the Excitation of Rage, Master of Sanctity, and the Imperium Sword. But it also had Mantra of Strength, which is +1 to your priest attack, strength, and damage. So it didn't get the +2 to charge, but it did get some more damage when it hits. So you can actually turn this thing not only into a pretty maneuverable support piece that can just fly around with your Vanguard veterans, but it's also like a bit of a beat stick on its own.
Yeah, very much so. Like and that support sort of countercharge role is again excellent.
And an excellent stratagem to draw people's attention to if they don't already know it already. So there is a stratagem for chaplains where you can, out of phase, automatically cast a litany. It's called Commanding Oratory. So you have to use the stratagem at the start of any phase other than your command phase, and you have to select a chaplain that hasn't recited any litanies. So you have to kind of plan ahead a little bit with this, or forget and accidentally remember that you forgot to do it and then do this anyway. But generally, I'd advise planning it ahead. So you could use this one specifically with Tom's veteran combo. So you were talking about throwing them forward and then charging, whereas you could throw them forward and then automatically cast the +2 to charge one.
Yeah.
To get that buff on your veterans. And what's great about that is you guarantee know that it's going to happen unless someone vects the stratagem.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And the thing is, you don't even need to necessarily charge either. You can just sit there. Because you've got a very reliable 21, 22-inch threat range.
Yes.
So now you've just cornered off 44 inches of the board before you even add in the radius of the unit.
Well, so that's why...
It's only 44 inches wide.
So now, that's why I'd like to talk about defensive blocking. So, like, trying to hold an objective, basically, is really what we're talking about. And that's why I really like that core of Intercessors / Heavy Intercessors, because they can project power versus something like Assault Intercessors, because they can project power consistently from where they go and hold that objective. And with all those support pieces, you know, they're very, very, very survivable. So they can sit there, tank... Like, you know, whereas you could do something like the Blade Guard Vets who go in, they smash off the objective, and then they push on to the, you know, to your enemy's home objective, and they push through. That's another way of doing it, and maybe that's a good way of doing it as well. But that defensive block-in that you've got from just the high toughness and high armor save is just phenomenal. Like, that's the thing when I use the Orc Boys and I go and punch something off an objective, they're useless stood there. Like, they do nothing valuable being stood there, but I need them to stand there, and the Marine strength is that they're so good at standing somewhere and shooting somewhere else. It's super frustrating. Yeah. Like, in a good way. Like, Marine players are, like, laughing, right? Like, Marines is the problem to unlock, I would argue, in the game at the minute, like, to try and work out how to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because they've been so strong for a long time and lots of people are playing them, and also most people have a Marine army, and they're one of the new books now. So obviously, they're going to be at the top, well, towards the top of the power level, purely because they're first in line to get the new book.
I mean, Necrons have got one too.
Yeah, but I don't think they were quite. They're not on the same, quite on the same power level as Marines. Well, no, never know. Time might tell. They might be better. Who knows? But we'll have to wait and see, I think.
Tristan, there isn't also big love, Tristan. Nice to see you. Actually, no. Wahapedia might have that. If you're on Wahapedia, try that out. First to get a new book equals all downhill from here. It's true. All right. Have you guys got any other units that you want to really talk about for the different roles?
Well, any role or
any role. I know we've jumped around a lot, so I think
let's
it's worth...
let's talk. Well, can we do? I know we've talked about intercessors, but I definitely think they are pretty good damage dealer, and I want to get your guys' opinion on what you think, what weapon you'd arm it with, and what would the chat arm intercessors with? Because obviously we've talked about it before. They're the only unit in this book that can shoot twice, so I think they're a good damage dealer just on that basis. So it's 2 CP to shoot twice, and obviously you can have. So you can make that shooting better via your chapter choice. So it's probably best for like Iron Hands. It's quite good because they've got a strat Mercy is weakness, which means when you roll a 6 to wound, you double the wound. So obviously that gets better from shooting twice because you're getting twice as many chances at that. Stuff like Imperial Fist or Crimson Fist might be better because they get like exploding 6s to hit for bolter shots. So you're getting twice the amount of exploding 6s. And obviously we've mentioned there's a couple of litanies that might make shooting twice better for intercessors. There's a +1 to hit and +1 to wound litany. So obviously they're going to make shooting, you're getting double the value out of shooting twice with intercessors. So you can have the auto bolt rifles, which are assault, but they got 3 shots. So that gives you 60 shots when you shoot twice. Or the bolt rifle, which gives you 40 shots when you shoot twice. Or the heavy, which gives you 20 shots when you shoot twice. So I would choose the auto bolt rifles just because you get 30 shots twice. So I think if you're shooting twice and you're getting buffs on that shooting, I want the more shots to take advantage of it. And I did you use the Math Hammer app to work out the average. So shooting auto bolt rifles twice kills 8 Primaris Marines. Shooting the bolt rifles twice kills 6, and then the heavies kills 7. So they're not actually too far away from each other against Primaris Marines on average. That's assuming that they're in the tactical doctrine, they've got a captain, a short lieutenant, and they're in short range.
Yeah, well, that's why I personally I feel very, very drawn to the bolt rifles. I think that little bit of pip of range might come in handy that one time. Which I think is... And also, yeah, exactly. And they start out with that AP1. And I think that's... I'm all for giving someone a whole bunch of saves to make, but like with a weight of dice attack. But I also think just having that AP, I'm very, very. I don't know what it is like. I'm sure there is some supporting maths, but having just played Warhammer a while now, like as soon as I can get I'd prefer them to make a worse save than give them a few more dice. Generally, especially for that time when it spikes out in my direction. I think it's more likely to in some situations. So yeah, I'm more tempted by the rapid fire bolt rifle. It's AP1 at the end of the day. So I think that's what I would equip guys with. I don't know, Tom, you got any thoughts?
Nope. Nikos just lodged a bunch of maths at me, and I was like, oh, yes.
Maths. I thought you loved the maths, Tom. I'll give you some average kills.
Yeah. There you go. Nikos did the maths.
Oh, also.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's later. I've got more maths coming up in my next damage unit that I'd like to talk about.
I'd also be designing units to deal with other Marines. Is where my general life is at. Like I wouldn't be designing for like clearing a horde of orc boys, for instance. You know, I'm not looking at stuff and thinking, how do I get rid of? And also, like if you have too much AP, like if you have no AP, obviously that's bad. But if you have too much AP, then like you're just hitting invulnerable saves on some other stuff that you might be trying to aim at. So yeah.
What if I told you, Rob, that I know a way to kill 13 Primaris Marines on average?
Then I want to hear about it. I hope it's my favourite unit. Please tell me.
I'm talking about Terminators with lightning claws.
It's not what I was expecting, but brilliant. Okay,
I mean, you got to get there first.
Yeah, well, so 10 Terminators with lightning claws gets you 41 attacks. I think they're best in Blood Angels or a custom chapter that has access to +1 to charge. Because if in Blood Angels you get +1 to charge anyway, but Blood Angels are better than the custom chapter because Blood Angels also get the +1 to wound, which stacks really nicely with lightning claws, I think. So 10 Terminators, you give them a captain, maybe with Terminator armor or jump pack, as long as you can deep strike with them. You could maybe combo this with a chaplain, actually, with the litany that gives you +2 to charge, because that would mean they're charging on a 7, use a command point to re-roll the 7, making it quite a reliable charge. Or you just drop them in as Blood Angels needing an 8 and use that command re-roll to re-roll the 8 to charge.
Mm-hmm.
Your captain can have a warlord trait that gives it the Imperial Sword. I think it gives you re-roll charges anyway, so you can make sure that you can give him a good solid chance of getting closer to you're not having to daisy chain back enough to lose out on some of the unit's attacks. So you get 4 attacks each with a Terminator with 2 lightning claws. You can use a strat called Fury of the First to give them +1 to hit. Your captain's obviously there giving you reroll 1s to hit, and lightning claws reroll all their wounds, which is at strength 4, rerolling it's AP2 but AP3 in the Assault Doctrine. And if you're Blood Angels, this is why I'd take him with Blood Angels, you get +1 to wound to that. So if you're fighting a knight, you're wounding on 6s, but now you're wounding on 5s, re-rolling everything. Or if you're fighting against other Marines, you're wounding on 4s down to 3s, re-rolling. So some more maths for you, Tom. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
So that unit fighting a knight does 16 damage on average, or kills 13 Primaris Marines on average.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think one of the strengths of Marines' reliability is transhuman. I've not done the maths for the transhuman thing, but even if your opponent does transhuman physiology, the lightning claws aren't that affected because they're wounding on 4.
You just lose a +1 to wound.
Yeah. So the re-rolls, I think I've always
then, dude. Like you're losing your +1 to wound, which you get free anyway as Blood Angels, and you're making them spend 2 CP. Now that is a big opportunity cost.
Yeah. That's quite good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I worry about getting them there though.
Well, you deep strike
and charge,
reliable charge.
Yeah, no, I do that with orcs all the time though. But that orcs, I mean, and Nick, do you remember that game where I got none of them charges off?
No, I don't.
Like you could stick them in a Land Raider Crusader. I think that has the biggest capacity, so you could have 10 in there with maybe a chaplain and a commander. But obviously, Land Raiders aren't amazing. But yeah, that's one way you could do it without deep striking.
I guess the deep striking also just always poses a threat to a particular line, right? But like, I feel like the tradition of I need to protect my backline doesn't really exist anymore because I feel like it's going to be a lot of forward-facing moving threats, and so the deep strike thing is good, but it's also I don't know. It's a cool unit though, super cool unit, very very cool. But yeah, Tom, you got any thoughts on that unit specifically?
Sounds funny. I don't think I'll ever play it though because I think it's very situational.
Okay.
Because with deep strikers, your opponent can always pick what you hit, right?
Yes. In the right situation, which I think you can manipulate quite well. If you
if you could move your models, if I can pick my model up and put it somewhere else.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you're not losing anything. It's still got value.
We obviously can't ignore Eradicator squads. Because they're broken. Basically,
we had this discussion on the Squadcast where I was saying, by the way, 69, nice. Where we were saying, there's Nekos. We were saying,
I was saying nice too. So Gremmer BB in the chat said that White Scars Terminators with lightning claws do more damage than that. So because they're super tactic on the charge to get +1 damage, they'd be flat 2 damage lightning claws.
You don't get +1 to wound though.
No, you're still re-rolling. So that's still
yeah, it depends on what you want to hit. Where was I? Oh, yeah. A lot of people online were saying, you can take 18 Eradicators and you'd ruin everybody's fun now. When I was talking to the guys on the Squadcast, they were saying, take 3, 5, and 7. You don't need that many.
So yeah, like Eradicators obviously are phenomenal for their ability to just absolutely
Yeah,
take
but that
out
doesn't
some
mean that you
vehicles.
just take as many as you can.
No, it doesn't. And actually, I have a counter argument for Eradicators for damage dealers. They're obviously great. They're obviously great, and they're obviously super useful as well. However, like in a game of like numbers, like as in weight of dice, let's say, I don't necessarily. I kind of, this brings up something I tried to say to you guys in WhatsApp like yesterday when we were talking about doing the show, is that I think there's some sort of conversation, like a lot of what we so far haven't talked about any vehicles. You know, we've kind of touched on ATVs, and there's also dreadnoughts.
I mean, they're not even vehicles, Rob. They're bikers.
Thank you. Good point.
Yeah.
Right, but like the kind of conversation that I tried to have with you guys is that like some of the prevailing threats that we might see, let's say Gazi, Catans, toughness 7, like Morty, Magnus, those things you would expect to eventually, when they get their books, to see them around the tabletop, and that's all toughness 7. Morty wound models with good and vulnerable saves, but toughness 7. And the toughness 8 stuff, or the toughness 8 meta that we had in 8th edition, where obviously it was predominantly knights, and then eventually it became like Leviathan Dreads and stuff. So maybe having strength 9 stuff, or even strength 8, so that you wound on 4s, was actually fairly valuable. Whereas now, I don't necessarily think that it's as important. I don't have much actual. That's anecdotal. That's just a feeling. So,
well, also they have diminishing returns, right? Like, let's say your opponent even has to just have a bunch of vehicles. Well, you've killed them 2 knights in how many shots?
Yeah, whatever it takes to take them out. Yeah. Whereas,
I think the issue with Eradicators though is, yes, their value in respect to killing vehicles may go down if there's less vehicles around. But I think Eradicators they're just good at killing elite units.
Yeah, and standing there because they're durable for their points.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, they're durable enough. But whereas the other unit I'd like to talk about for doing damage is Inceptors, but specifically Inceptors with the Plasma Exterminators, right? Because again, I know you can put the Eradicators out in reserve or whatever you want to do, but like I think that these guys are really, really good because like I was trying to think of something that could reliably deal with Marines en masse, whereas the Eradicators can't do that. Like if we're talking about there being a lot of Marines and a lot of Marines en masse, I feel like these are in like an okay position, you know, like, and they're not very expensive either to do their job. So for each Inceptor, you get a Plasma Exterminator, so you end up with 2. So it's basically 2d3. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2d3, strength 8, -3, doing 2 damage. Like, and they I think they're rocking at something like 45 points. A dude. Let me just double check that. Where's my Inceptor squad? So yeah, it's 50 points. So you end up with, it costs like 300 points to do this, but for that unit of 6, and again you don't have to take a 6, you can take it down to a 5. So thank you, everyone in the chat. Yeah, you know, for that unit of 6, if you were rocking all 6, you would end up with 12d3 shots, which is 24 shots. But they're hitting on 3s. They're strength 8, so they're going to be wounding most Marines on 3s as well, which is on 2s. Sorry, which is also really important. Unless they're Gravis, in which case it can be 3s. But then -3, so they're punching through most of the armor, and then it's that nice 2 damage. And you could do a lot with that unit, I think, especially because it's quite a small footprint. Like, you could be fairly adaptable with it. Like, you can really make some choices. And then, like, you know, their toughness 5 and 3 up armor save, they're as good as everything else. It's an expensive unit, though. I won't lie. Like, maybe it's just better to just go massed bolters. But I think it's a really versatile unit to deploy on the board. And will do the job that the Eradicators do, but it's more adaptable. I'm not sure how that like plays into knights. I think it still does okay into vehicles and stuff. But it's pretty good. Yeah. You got any thoughts?
No, I think they are good. Definitely. I think even if you go plasma and you come up against an orc horde, they still do a reasonable amount of shots that they're going to chew away some of the boys.
Yeah.
So even if you go into a horde, they're still quite relevant, and they can charge in. They've got 2 attacks each, 3 attacks when they charge. You can do, I think, because they're jump packs, you can do the Hammer of Wrath stratagem as well.
Exactly. That's
what I'm jazzed about. They've got a bit more utility than just being a shooter unit for damage, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And then after that, depending on how your opponent's turn goes, they move 10, so they're like whipping around the board. And I think they're wicked. Honestly, I think that's a really solid choice because it's more situational than necessarily the Eradicators, especially if it plays out that way. Because I don't think Eradicators into Marines are as good as we maybe would want them to be. Because what are you really shooting at the Marines? Some Redemptor dreadnoughts that are knocking around? Maybe?
Speaking of which, we haven't spoken about Redemptor dreadnoughts either.
After you, Tom.
Oh, mate, I love them.
I'm sad that
Nikos,
you don't like. I'm sad you guys aren't
because
excited
you
about
played
the Inceptors. I'm jazzed about the
Maybe-
Inceptors.
I think they're good, but maybe what puts me off is I don't like the model. I think the model looks a bit silly.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Oh, what? Even the plasma guys.
Yeah, I like
Oh.
the dome helmet thing. I think that's kind of cool, but the rest, like the feet look weird. The backpack doesn't look as cool as the old jump packs.
It's true. Also, thank you very much to Jack Vincent over on YouTube. Says don't forget, obviously, that their guns are also blast. So if I'm shooting at a horde, with them, then it's going to be maxed out. So that's sexy. Anyway,
Yeah.
Go on. You guys talk. Oh, they look great, Nick. I'm getting some. I just want you to know that. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be Phobos in and then just dropping down plasma guys. It's going to be great. Also, Nick, you against plasma? What's going on? 2020. You got.
It's plasma. I didn't say it was bad. I think it's a good unit. I was agreeing with you.
All right, good. All right, Nick. Sorry, what are we talking about next? Redemptors, Tom. You want to talk about Redemptors?
I mean, I want Nikos to talk about Redemptors because he used them last week.
Oh, okay. Nick.
Redemptors are they're a bit. I'm surprised you like them, Tom, because they're kind of they have a bit of combat and a bit of shooty.
It's mainly about the range, and it's hard to charge them and get rid of. It's hard to shoot them and get rid of them because of -1 damage.
I think
It's hard to charge them and get rid of them because of -1 damage and the decent output in combat, even though they don't have too many attacks. And the range is now at a point where you can actually hit most of the midboard rather than it just being 30-inch range, what you can keep out of it most of the time. Whereas now, because of where the objectives are stacked and where you have to stick your units, then it can really remove a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so it's a really tough. So you're toughness 7, 13 wounds, and 3 up save. It's got, like Tom said, it's got the inbuilt -1 damage stratagem now into all dreadnoughts. I think
so. It's not a stratagem right now. Just to clarify, it's just a base
it
rule.
was a stratagem. It's now just a rule on its data slate,
Which is dumb.
You get all
good.
the Agents of Death stuff, so you get shock assault and all that kind of stuff.
It is now Wave Serpent.
Lots of shots if you go for the Gatling cannon route. It's big power fist, doesn't have a -1 to hit, and it's D3 plus 3 damage. It's got really, really reliable damage at high strength. I think you get 5 attacks in the first round. But then also what is great about it is that even if you charge it to shut it, even if you move up, shoot, punch something, even if you get stuck in a protracted combat, you can shoot into combat because you're a vehicle. So you're never really not shooting with it. So it's going to be pumping out damage, a lot of damage, like quite reliably because it's a Marine, and consistently because you can't stop it shooting unless you kill it. Whereas before, like previous edition and 8th edition, you could just tag it and stop it shooting.
I think the fact that you can shoot into combat is excellent. My only question is, my only thoughts is that it's, and why I'm super attracted to the Inceptors, the Intercessors, the Heavy Intercessors, all of that. I'm attracted to them because it's more bodies on the board and they're more OBSEC units on the board as well. Like, do you not? Are you not generally concerned in list building anyway about single models?
Well, you can with Marines. You can get around the OBSEC thing a little bit because it is core, like Final Cookies pointed out in the chat. You get access to rerolls, but also there's a Warlord trait, and also I think the Relic, one of the Ancient Banner. I don't know if it's the upgraded Ancient, but you can. There's a couple of ways to get core units to have OBSEC within 6 of either the Warlord or the Banner. So
the standard of the Emperor Ascendant, right?
I think so, yeah. And then the Warlord trait is Rites of Battle. So that makes core units OBSEC. So you could have a Redemptor Dreadnought just sat on one of your home objectives or waddling forward to a middle one, and he could potentially be objective secured. I agree what you're saying about wanting more bodies for objectives, but I think the Redemptor Dreadnought is just it's a very solid unit that pumps out quite a lot of damage. So maybe its damage output and resiliency is possibly worth having less models for objectives.
Okay,
I think
it's just I just wonder if it brings anything, like maybe it just brings a hyper efficient amount of output. I just wonder if for the same I couldn't just get similar output for just more bodies, really. Like, which is just where I'm so focused in this book, because having looked at like the survivability, I'm just like, do you know what? I just want more dudes. Like, you know, like I mean, I could see something super useful like having a plane or something to fly to the backboard, try and start like harassing characters. I can see that being fairly useful, and you being able to stack abilities on top of them as well. But I don't know. Yeah. I hear what you're saying though. I hear what you're saying. Sexy Redemptor can do the work. Yeah. And a lot of people, like a lot of conversation happening about the Redemptor at the minute and just how efficient it is. But I feel it's just the one that's going to be hyper efficient, not like a horde of them are going to be hyper efficient. You can't scale up its effectiveness. Maybe you can. All right. You got any other units, Tom, that you want to talk about? Yeah, mic's off, bud.
I lost the little Skype thing, so I assume that I got it. No, that's fine. I wanted to talk about company veterans a little bit. Not only do they make the apothecary count as not taking up a detachment slot, but I think they're really good as capping units that can block off. So earlier we were talking about how Vanguard veterans for 23 points have 2+ save, 4+ vulnerable save, 2 wounds. Now imagine putting that on an utter garbo useless unit that doesn't do anything apart from tank wounds. Are you going to spend a load of time just shooting a 2-model unit with total 4 wounds and a 2+ armor save and a 4+ vulnerable just to kick it off the back end of the board? I would hope not. That's a bit of a waste of time. If you're shooting at that, you probably won the game.
Yeah, true.
So if you can get a very, very cheap unit for 48 points, you can get 2 company veterans with bolt guns and storm shields, but just sit back and cap stuff for you. And block off areas of the board for deep striking.
Do
and when
actions.
the board's smaller, there's a lot. And do actions. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's nothing groundbreaking.
Are they the crypto thralls of this book?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, yeah, they are, except they are not OBSEC. I don't believe. But it's just they're not a particularly exciting unit, but they're the water carriers. I really like them. I think they're really good.
Okay, all right. So one of the things I want to talk about, because I'm not 100% certain in this book, is character suppression. Like, now I know that we have dedicated sniper units. Like, I know they exist, but like, are they really finding room inside the book? Like, and is this kind of like an interesting kind of mirror conversation where against Marines, character suppression is super, super important if you can take out those apothecaries, if you can take out those librarians, like maybe even the captains. Is that actually a really valuable tactic to try and like include in your list? Or like, is that not really going to work?
So,
do you know what I mean?
Can I go on this first, Nicholas? Because I've got an idea on this. In 9th edition, is character suppression really only just killing the characters?
No, like for instance, like just being able to do like a deny, like doing a deny is also valuable as well.
My thing with this is a lot of the buffs now are wholly within or they're short range.
Yes.
And so when you are pushing them forward, you have to be thinking, how much damage can these things in front of my characters take before my characters start to be picked off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have things that can really just like push into the center and just push the enemy units off, you have to be thinking, I need a pathway backwards for my characters. Or even, have I got enough stuff in front of my characters? Or have I got enough units here that I can actually just tank all that stuff and my characters are going to be fine?
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. Like, it's the classic conversation. Do I take out the synergy piece, like, which is why character suppression is, do I take out that synergy piece or do I take what they're buffing?
Well, what I'm saying is you have to be thinking, can you take things from this book but make your opponent think, how far forwards can I afford to stick this character?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Is there something? Okay. Can you give the illusion of suppression without?
We had this at the ETC when Gaz, the team captain of Wales, was playing against some orcs with his Eldar, and he thought he saw an opportunity to kill the shock attack gun, and he fully committed and he killed everything in front of it, and then he killed the shock attack gun. Right. It wasn't the shock attack gun because there was a bit of an issue, but he killed the mech anyway, right?
Yeah.
And that was because the opponent assumed that he'd left enough stuff in front of that character to be able to keep it safe, right?
Yes.
Well, in 9th edition, it's not just is there stuff in the way. It is also, Is there stuff in the way, and is there enough stuff close to my character?
I think for me, the real conversation is that, especially against Marines, killing everything in front of it means you've already won the game anyway. Like, in front of the character, oftentimes. Whereas, like, if there's some sort of way, I wouldn't mind seeing something out, like an army that isn't Marine based, that's very, very heavy on the character suppression. But I don't think that you would build character suppression into a Marine force, because I think that's one of the areas that they can spec into it quite well, but I don't know what army that you're trying to stop that isn't. Maybe you're trying to take out, like, your Cryptex and your Lords from Necrons, maybe. But
I mean, they're the only other characters that aren't Marines at this point, right? Because everyone else is getting a book anyway.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I don't know, Nick, you got any thoughts on this?
I kind of think that at some point in the future, mortal wounds are already strong anyway, because they get around a lot of resiliency and stuff. And I think mortal wounds are going to get more valuable the more elite. If the meta goes more elite, if we see more heavy intercessors and stuff like that, I think mortal wounds are going to be more valuable. So maybe you'll see more like Thousand Suns armies, particularly when they get their updates. So you might have like big blocks of horrors or cultists protecting psychers. So maybe then more character suppression will be needed, or be more valuable than in your armor list.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. What, to try and stop those psychers and shut them down? But right now, it doesn't feel like it's something you need. And obviously, the Eliminators fill that role, so you do have the option inside the book, whether or not they're brilliant for doing it.
Yeah, and I think the best version of character suppression is psychic powers, particularly the ones where you don't need line of sight on them, because I think nowadays with the new line of sight blocking obscuring terrain in 40k, snipers have got much of a harder time getting shots on people because of the terrain.
Yep.
They've got an advantage because they know that, but you know where the objectives are, you know where units want to go, but characters don't necessarily aren't necessarily jumping onto the objectives, so you don't necessarily know where the characters are going to be. So yeah, like I said, I think the terrain is a big disadvantage to snipers nowadays, so that's why I think psychic powers is the best type of character suppression, and Marines don't necessarily have that.
No, I don't think they do. I don't think they do. I mean, you could argue that, like, so they can build some pretty good, like, chapter smashers, you know, and guys like that. But I feel like if you're spending all those points, relics, like warlord traits, to just go and hunt a couple of, like, characters, then maybe you're in the wrong spot, truthfully. Like, I don't think that's necessarily their job, but it depends what characters we have out there in the world. You know, like something like Ghazi, for instance, you're not going to throw any sort of like combat character at him for any reason, because he's not going to die. Like, it's better to just try and bring him down over turns. So that's the wrong sort of character suppression. So yeah, I mean, Eliminators are in there for that role anyway, so they exist and they can do it if you need them to do it. But I think you make a good point. Tom, you got any thoughts on character suppression?
No, Marines suck at it.
Oh, well, they do have access.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they do have access to things like land speeders and, like, you know, Stormhawk interceptors and those sorts of things. Like little planes. I've always thought that planes are a really good character suppressing unit because they could just fly. Like, everyone's like, oh, sweet. Like, he's safe at the back, and you're like, cool, this is going to move 50 inches and stand right next to him. And then people are always like, shit, I forgot about that. I know, but I've seen it more than once. Generally, it's a pretty good tactic. And they do have access to those to do that, right? Even just like having it next to the character and then it just dying or something is always useful. All right. We covered? Where are we up to?
We've covered a lot of units. We just kind of went all over the place with that because this book is also all over the place.
It is. But it's a great book. Super fun. Is there anything you guys have do you think we've missed so far?
Well, we've kind of mentioned the Blade Guard veterans, but haven't really talked about them. I think I'm sure people know what they are and how good they are now anyway. So,
well, see, my argument is like, again, like, because I looked at them like in depth. They're very, very, very good, but they're going to run onto an objective, fight the thing on the objective, probably win either in that get round or the next round or attrition out. But then they're going to have to run onto the next objective. like, and go fight.
But I think at that point, I feel like they've done their job, because now it's only a 5-turn game. You've not got ages and ages of time and turns to do stuff with.
True.
So I think if you have a plan, you go, right, this unit of 5 Blade Guard Venturants is gonna, because a lot of the time you've got either 1 or 2 in your home deployment zone, and then two to 4 in the middle zone. So you can just like, right, these lads are going to start here, they're going to run, and they're going to finish and take that objective there. So maybe you don't necessarily need them to be going from objective to objective, as long as they just do that one job of running onto that middle objective, fighting whoever's there, or just standing there and being resilient, because they've got the storm shields and multiple wounds, so they can survive.
Yeah, they do that job well. They really, really do. And like, there are a ton of wounds. They're so cheap as well. Have you seen the points on them? They're so fucking cheap.
It's the way of the new box release.
Man.
That special rule of the new box releases, they're always efficiently costed for the points.
It's pretty wild how cheap they are. I was like, fuck. Like, because, you know, you're looking at other things in that role. I would argue that I still feel like the heavy intercessors kind of job is the set, like, they can move up, they could shoot, they can fight in there, not as well, and they also can't survive as well. But I feel like, but yeah, I mean, they're bonkers. They're bonkers good, and you know, you can't avoid them. They're great for taking objectives and holding objectives. They're everything a Terminator's always wanted to be, I think.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. All right. You can't avoid them. So what about transports? I think this is one of the things that, like, I was looking at quite a bit, and I think it's really relevant that we haven't talked very much at all about vehicles. And I wonder if this is going to be a continuing trend. In that, like, I looked at the Impulsor and I looked at some of the other stuff, and I'm like, they're all good, but I'm taking, like, I can understand doing some move blocking with the vehicles, but apart from that, I don't know why else I would take them, if that makes sense.
Well, the transports or vehicles in general, sorry.
Vehicles in general, but also transports, I think.
Well, I think one reason you take the Impulsor is because it has a rule that I don't think... and there might be some other transports that have this rule, but it's quite unique for a transport, where the assault vehicle rule, so you can shoot it across the board and then offload its transport, its
payload,
dudes inside it, onto an objective like really early. So rather than having to move the transport sit there and then get out the next turn, so you can move it up and plop out some objective secured dudes onto an objective and steal it away from your opponent quite nicely.
Yeah, it's true. And it moves fast as well, so you can get them all the way across the board super quick.
Yeah.
But then I feel like, wouldn't you just load all those points into just some bikers? Do you know what I mean? If you wanted those like fast, like get around units, you would.
Well, one advantage of a transport is that it protects. Maybe you don't want to move it up and get them out straight away. Maybe you want a turn to deal with your opponent's damage before you get your guys out of the transport. Maybe you move them up on the transport onto the objective and sit it there, trying to deal with whatever your opponent has for damage output before you get your dudes out. And maybe if you took bikers instead, that damage would just kill the bikers. Whereas an Impulsor may be more resilient to that damage.
True, but and the Blader makes a point on YouTube, and I think maybe it's a point. Like, what's its job later on? Like, it drops off the dudes, and then what's its job? Just to go be annoying.
Yeah, go be annoying.
Being annoying is a good strat.
I think that's still really valuable. I don't think you should discount how good being an annoyance could be. Because I've played rhinos quite a lot, and your opponent doesn't want to waste, because you've got to put a significant amount of firepower to kill a rhino, because it's got 10 wounds and toughness 7 and 3-up save. It's no mean feat just to brush it aside and kill it. And if it's like getting in your way, getting in the way of your movement, it's charging you so you can't shoot stuff and can't move very far. It is really good as an annoyance unit.
Very strong. Yeah, it's a good point. I don't know. I'm a little bit obsessed with just bodies on the board at the minute, but then maybe I'd scale that back. Like, if I felt like
classic orc player, look at him.
I can't help myself. It's also a classic objective-based game, like, sort of play. It's just like, how much can I get, and like, flood, really. and I feel that that's super valuable. But yeah, I can see your point, Nick, and having been on the receiving end of rhinos from Unic, I absolutely see the value of them, like in a super big way. Like even this edition, I've seen you use them to like pin down my shooting units while other units have just held objectives. So I think that there's some genuinely valuable conversations to always have about transports, not necessarily for transporting stuff somewhere. I know that sounds dumb, but for like getting in the way, really, is what I'm trying to say. I think that's the more valuable part.
Yeah.
Because you can build some fast armies in Marines. Okay, all right, sweet. I think we've done a pretty good job today. If you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some good Marine stuff.
I think there's some solid thoughts there. There's a lot. I think the one of the key takeaways, or I don't know if you guys have got like a final thoughts like Jerry Springer. For me, it's interesting how much I was never attracted to talking about vehicles, and I kept moving away from them. I was like, because this book has got, for roles, this book has got everything in an infantry squad, and they're also going to hold an objective for me. And I think that's really interesting, right?
I think maybe because I feel like vehicles for Marines, their transport, like Eldar have interesting transports because they're like fly, they're fast, they've got some cool weapons. Whereas Marine transports are generally, I think, a bit more boring, where it's just a box on wheels or floating box that transports dudes around.
Mm-hmm.
And the other Marine tanks are just purely focused on doing damage. And like you say, mostly it's about objective play, and damage doesn't win you points. Well, it can do, but it doesn't score your points on the objectives necessarily. So maybe, a 10-man infantry squad also does damage and is more interesting to play with than a big tank that shoots. So maybe that's why you're not that fussed about vehicles. I don't know.
Yeah, that's at least a me thing. I'm not saying it's an everyone thing, but I think it's just at least a me thing. Tom, you got any sort of roundups like on your feelings about the book as a whole and about the units as a whole?
Yeah, there's too much shit in it.
Yeah,
look at how thick that is, man.
Yeah, it's wild. Honestly, I think
Stop making me read stuff.
if you just ignore all the units that weren't released in the past 3 years, then you're in a good spot. Personally,
True.
Just rip those pages out.
Honestly, I thought about putting like a little X on them and just being like, "Don't bother reading." Like, why do I have to read about the attack bike squad? Like, why am I reading about it?
Just on the page, just like, like this page.
Also, because they're just almost always outclassed by the other squad that they've released to do that job, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just dumb. But then that makes it less daunting. Like, I would argue. I wonder what the book would look like if you just took out the old shit. Okay, and yeah, good. We've all had a roundup. That's my roundup. Nick, you've had a roundup, haven't you? Yeah. Oh, have you had a roundup? Oh, no. What's yours?
I have. My roundup is, I think Phobos stuff looks really cool and is probably some of the best stuff in the book for... I think maybe a good split. Like you say, you have your home base of like solid, more Primaris stuff like Intercessors and stuff like that. But then your advanced force, I think Primaris are really good at that. I love Infiltrators or Winfiltrators. And we didn't really speak about Reavers because there's that deny obsec strat that Reavers can use really nicely. So I think for objective play and board control, Phobos stuff is really, 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 really good. And if I was to do a Primaris Marine army, I'd probably start collecting Phobos, which Stu Flynn has done during the show because of our chats.
Yes, get that 10%, Nick. Somehow. Honestly, I'm super attracted to just bodies on the board, heavy intercessors. Like, I'm just like, that would be rad. I think that would be cool. I like the idea of there being a wizard, a priest, me firing some gunshots, me dropping some boys out from the sky and doing some plasma. I think it would look different. There'd be a load of different sorts of different types of models, different units. It's crazy cheap. Like, I don't know if everyone else is thinking these units are crazy cheap, but I feel like they're crazy cheap for what you get for them. That's where I'm at. They seem very cheap.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been lovely. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Next week we'll be creating some lists for ourselves and talking about them on the show. So let us know what you think about that. Tom, you got any thoughts about what you might be trying to lean in towards next week?
No.
No, not a meme list or anything like that.
I'll probably do a meme list. Let's be honest. I'll do something that no one else has done before. Because if everyone else is testing all the good stuff, then I'll test stuff that probably doesn't look good, but might be.
Well, doesn't look good would be the ATVs, I think.
Right, well, people are testing that because for some reason people think that's good.
Big shout out to Gozzy for being in the chat.
Shout out to Gozzy.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Big love. Nick, you got any thoughts what you might be doing next week for the show?
Definitely a Phobos-based list.
Okay. All right.
So,
I think mine sounds super boring, though, so I might try and do something that's a little bit more interesting than what I said. Even though it's exciting for me, it reminds me. I don't know if you read the the first Horus Heresy books, where it's just like they're just implacably walking across. Like it feels like I played a lot of Heresy, so you would just buy 20-man squads, and you'd be like, okay, I want to collect Blood Angels, so I need 60 Marines, and let you do those first, and then you'd buy all the toys. And I feel like it feels like a very Heresy book, and it's got me all jazzed. I'm like, oh yeah. So whatever. That's kind of where I'm at. So, maybe mine will just be all boys, whatever. Don't care. Classic multiplayer. Thanks to Diffie for being on the show. Really appreciate that. Standing in for Reese. Yeah, appreciate that, Diffie. Thanks to everyone else.
Briefly.
Pardon me?
And you came on to do his TED Talk, though.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Reese. That was really nice. Yeah. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Stufflin, Will Dockerall, Gozzy. Will, I hope you're well, by the way. I know you're still working. Space Marines have many units because they have too many chapters. Units work better for certain chapters. Yes, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But you still have the core abilities, and then they get better depending on which chapters they're in, right? But thanks to that. Angle, T-Man Cash, thanks very much. Thanks to everyone on this Wargaming Patreon. Thanks for supporting us and helping us do the show. And thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast. Please stay hydrated. Drink loads of water, especially in these trying times. You got any shout outs you want to give, Nick?
Shout out to Ed Sheeran. Because rumour has it we're his favourite Warhammer show.
We are. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Tom, are you eventually going to do a shout out?
No, because I really need the toilet.
Okay. All right. Well,
Shout out to Tom's toilet.
Okay. I'm shouting out to Tom's toilet then. Everyone else, look after yourselves, and we'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.